Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable, see playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 41, A Game of Cat and Mouse. Leo was already angry about waiting for so long and strode over to Zen demanding, "Zen, you promised to fight with me in the battle ring today. Why are you late? If you back out of this battle ring challenge, I will let you off, but only if you kneel before me, and call me your superior 3 times. Then, you will withdraw from the Cloud sect and hide at home like the coward you are." With an innocent look, Zen blinked and casually stated, "Well, I agreed to fight with you in the battle ring today. But, whether it is noon or midnight, today hasn't passed. So tell me, did I promise you an exact time?" questioned Zen. All Zen's flippant response did enrage Leo further, and he snapped back, "How cunning of you speaking such nonsense. Well, whatever you say now though will be of no use within the battle ring. Before we set foot in the battle ring, I have a request to make," stated Zen curtly. "What's your request? What do you want me to do?" "I am going to tell you that we are keeping the Cloud sect rules. The winner doesn't assume any responsibility for the opponent's death or impairment during a fight," stated Leo bored. Since he planned to take Zen's life, he couldn't make a promise to go easy on him anyway. Zen shook his head, frowning, and said, "No, opponents are supposed to beat each other mercilessly in the ring. I know the rules quite clearly. I think fights pure and straightforward like that are very boring. I was wondering if we could bet on something, and the winner of the fight will win the bet." The request left Leo somewhat shocked. He hadn't thought Zen would ask for such a thing. After the initial surprise wore off, Leo wondered what Zen was up to, and thought the outcome was inevitable. That was, Zen would die in the ring at Leo's hands if and when he got Zen into the ring. Leo decided he would grant Zen's request, if for no other reason than to get this fight underway. Leo couldn't believe Zen was so bold as to place a bet. He had no idea where Zen's confidence stemmed from. He doesn't think he actually has a chance of winning, does he? Considering the fact that he is at the organ refining level, and I am half step into the nature level, does he really think he stands a chance of beating me? That's a riot, Leo deemed. Haha, place a bet. Sure, that's a great idea. Tell you what, we'll bet on whatever you choose, responded Leo chuckling. Okay, I'll wager 100 cubic crystals, and you put up a top-grade mysterious weapon for your stake. My 100 cubic crystals will be yours if you win, but if you lose, your top-grade mysterious weapon will be mine, declared Zen grinning happily. 100 cubic crystals, repeated Leo, stunned for a second time by Zen. Being born into an ordinary, low-income family, Leo understood the value of cubic crystals. He wasn't supported by a big and powerful family like others. Although he had put his strength to use, earning numerous points over the years, he had spent them as quickly on useful pills and in honing his refinement skills. In fact, to refine oneself as a warrior took a great deal of money. A bet of 100 cubic crystal pieces was nothing to a noble clan disciple, but, for a disciple like Leo, it was a vast sum of money. Leo would happily place this wager with Zen, but he didn't have a top-grade mysterious weapon to bet with. "You jerk. You know I don't have a top-grade mysterious weapon. But you want me to put one up to place a bet with you? I think you are trying to get out of our fight," accused Leo furiously. There was a look of regret on Zen's face. He sighed as he stated, "If there is no weapon, I don't think there is a reason to fight. It would just be a waste of my energy to battle you. Since you can't bet such a weapon, why should I fight with you?" "Why, you?" Leo's face became redder the more enraged he got. "Apparently, you're looking for excuses to back out of our duel. I think you are full of hot air. In fact, I bet you don't even have 100 cubic crystals." As Leo finished accusing, pieces of cubic crystals slipped out of Zen's hands, cascading through his fingers, jingling loudly. Every piece of cubic crystals glittered translucently in the sunlight, sparkling more each time the light hit one. Cubic crystal was a hard currency. Outer disciples at Drizzle Peak were mostly born into ordinary, humble families. The glittering stack of cubic crystals were approximately 100 pieces. For the outer disciples present, it represented an enormous amount of money. Now, I have shown you numerous cubic crystals, and when you produce a top-grade mysterious weapon, I will step into the battle ring. If you can't do that, then, we won't fight. I honestly don't want to waste my energy, said Zen, as he stood in front of his stack of cubic crystals and laughed. Gazing at the stack of cubic crystals, Leo suppressed his anger and thought. From his view, a fight in the battle ring should be simple. But, with Zen's dawdling, it was becoming complicated and delayed. Suddenly, Thomas said in a bored tone, Leo, just bet a top-grade mysterious weapon like he wants, unless you are afraid you might lose. I would, except, I don't have a top-grade mysterious weapon, replied Leo glumly. Well, you don't have one, but, can't you borrow one? I can't believe no one you know at Drizzle Peak has a top-grade mysterious weapon, reminded Thomas. Hey, you're right, shouted Leo while looking around. At last, his eyes found who he was looking for, over in a corner, and he called out, Anthony, if memory serves, you have a top-grade mysterious weapon, right? Anthony, he not only had a top-grade mysterious weapon. He wasn't weak either. He smiled broadly and replied, yes, Leo. I do have a top-grade mysterious weapon. So what? Lend it to me for a short time. I'll give it back soon, stated Leo as though borrowing a mysterious weapon from Anthony he was a piece of cake. Unexpectedly, Anthony he shook his head responding, no. What, are you afraid this guy will beat me? Asked Leo furiously that someone would turn him down. Anthony shook his head again. No, I'm sure you won't lose. But, why should I lend it to you? It dawned on Leo what Anthony was hinting at, and he shut up, sighing as he rolled his eyes, and said, well, half the cubic crystals will be yours if I beat him, okay. Does that sound good? Now, will you agree to lend me your top-grade mysterious weapon? Only after Leo offered half of his winnings did Anthony smile in satisfaction and say, you should have said that earlier. Here, catch, Leo. As he exchanged banter, Anthony took a saber off his waist and tossed it casually at Leo, as though it was anything but a top-grade mysterious weapon. As the saber flew towards him, Leo reached out and caught it. Deep down, he believed Anthony was the sort who would do anything as long as it benefited him. The double-edged sword made a sheeing sound of metal rubbing against the casing as Leo unsheathed it. The 3-foot sword was bathed in a purple light. As soon as the sword was unsheathed, Leo said, Zen, does this meet your requirements? It is a first-level, top-grade weapon, known as the purple-blue sword. After taking a glimpse at the purple-blue sword, Zen nodded. He turned back to Nori and said, hold on to the cubic crystals for me. Having finished talking, Zen jumped into the battle ring. Seeing Zen in the battle ring, Leo was gratified in his heart, but he didn't show his joy. He feared nothing, except that Zen would give up before the fight started. So, Leo thrust the purple-blue sword into Nori and leapt into the battle ring as quickly as possible. In the ring, Zen stood tall with his hands balled into a fist and resting on his hips. The energy within his body started to flow slowly. In the face of this, Leo, who was cultivating on the half-step into the nature level, thought Zen looked unmindful. But, deep down, Zen was vigilant. Anyone who reached the level Leo was had a sixth sense about people. Leo had waited for quite a long time and wished to end this fight with Zen quickly. After he entered the ring, Leo sneered, and streaks of lightning flashed at his feet accompanied by the crackling of thunder, which encircled his entire form in a streak of lightning. He rushed at Zen headlong. The tactic Leo used was a refinement method known as the Raging Thunder Fist. In developing this skill, the speed and force that the life energy generated were equal to a thunderbolt and relatively amazing to watch. As Leo raced forward and drew closer, Zen watched him getting bigger to his eyes. When Leo was about 6 feet away, Zen realized Leo's fist had metamorphosed into an enormous streak of raging lightning, and in the blink of an eye, it struck Zen squarely on his head. Leo was skilled at manipulating the vital life energy of his half-step into the nature level as well as converting that life energy into a thunderbolt. The power of his fist was so mighty that the blow dazed Zen. Even as Zen saw Leo's fist flying at him, he didn't flinch. Instead, he tensed his fists. On impact, streaks of purple light sparked over his body. At first, he countered the Raging Thunder Fist with the purple fist strength from the purple light fist. He wanted to confront Leo head-on. As the audience watched the action, they were amazed, and their mouths fell open. Having initially thought Zen would scurry off like a frightened mouse as soon as he faced Leo, the spectators were astounded by the events. After all, the two combatants differed significantly in refinement levels, and if Zen attacked Leo directly, he would lose. Half of Zen's body would end up a charred, burned, mangled mess if their fists met. Bam! The sound of fists slamming into each other echoed through the room. Owing to the tremendous force of their fists slamming into each other, Zen stumbled back for 4 steps before he could steady himself. Yet, Leo looked rather odd when he was abruptly knocked off balance too, floundering back for 7 or 8 steps before he was able to right himself slowly. The strength behind Zen's fist shocked Leo, along with all the outer disciples watching the action. How could a refiner not know how important it was for him to reach higher levels? The body refining had 5 levels and the body strength was enhanced when a higher level was reached. What these disciples witnessed left them wondering when the organ refining level had become comparable to the half step into the nature level in strength. Whether they wanted to believe it or not, it had happened in sight of all of them. Zen's fist was mightier than Leo's. Like everyone else, there was a grave expression on Zen's face. When they collided just now, the purple light spread along Zen's arms after it came in contact with Leo's raging thunder fist, leaving Zen to think his purple fist strength was a little too weak to be given full play. As expected, the purple light fist wasn't enough for a confrontation with an opponent of this caliber. Leo's thunder power extended up Zen's arms like 2 bright snakes intertwining around his arms, snapping at his flesh frantically. The stench of flesh burning wafted along Zen's arms. It was shocking to Leo that the might behind Zen's blow was so great. Forcing a grim smile across his face at the sight of Zen's arms scorched black, Leo taunted, "How mighty your power is. But it seems your hand was wounded." "Really?" questioned Zen as a flat smile spread. He hadn't lost strength, yet, at the same time, there were numerous streaks of purple light pulsing along his arms. The life energy from flashes of purple light killed the 2 little snakes that were produced by the thunderbolt. Watching this, Leo blinked rapidly. Even though Zen was only at the organ refining level, his power was impressive and his body especially unique. Leo knew better than most how difficult countering the thunderbolt of the Raging Thunder Fist was. Nevertheless, the Raging Thunder Fist hadn't achieved the results Leo expected against Zen. Perhaps this was somehow associated with Zen's extraordinary gift. If Zen was refining at the half step into the nature level, Leo would have fled right away. Since Zen was merely at the level of refining organs, Leo thought even as mighty as Zen's power was, he could take him out. That thought sparked a streak of lightning from within Leo's eyes. Instantly, his figure vanished from within the battle ring. In a flash, Zen writhed sideways, and then Leo descended from above, shooting to the floor with his Raging Thunder Fist swinging wildly at the floor. His fist slammed into the floor, like a bolt of lightning out of the blue, sending a loud booming crackle echoing in ears of all present. "How fast's he moving?" Zen's brow furrowed as he asked under his breath. Focused on Leo, he realized too late that his biggest weakness was his slow reaction. There were 5 levels for the body refining, of which the marrow refining was the last. In refining the marrow, all impurities were extracted from the marrow of the entire body, and so it was known as marrow washing. Only after a successful marrow washing could changes be made to the body as a whole. When that was completed, the refiner would become much faster and physically stronger. Alongside those changes, hearing and sight would be improved. Zen recognized the skill Leo was using. Evil Lan had utilized it at one time, and Zen found himself in an unfavorable situation at that time because he couldn't see his opponent, like now. Thud, thump, ka-pow, came the sound as another Raging Thunder Fist strike slammed into Zen. This time, Zen dodged a little, resulting in his thighs being firmly seized by a powerful thunderbolt. Fortunately, Zen was steadfast, and his body's strength allowed him to absorb the force of the thunderbolt and didn't cause him any significant harm. "You aren't able to catch up to me, are you? Let's see how long you can hold out with me attacking like this," boasted Leo, giddy with excitement as he pummeled Zen like a punching bag. Bop, thud, rap, as Leo flew towards Zen with each blow, he yelled savagely. "You're quite good at dodging, aren't you? How long do you think you can withstand my attacks just by dodging? Come on." Within the ring, there was a game of cat and mouse being played. Nonetheless, regardless of how artfully the mouse evaded the cat, it was only a matter of time before the cat caught it. Chapter 42. Reaching the marrow refining level. Zen is awesome. Since he is only at the organ refining level, it's not easy for him to withstand Leo's fist for so long. Besides, he has been at Drizzle Peak for a short time, claimed a disciple who was standing outside the combat ring. Would you like to tell Master Su, Sean? He may be good for Drizzle Peak in the future. At least, we won't be so passive at the annual tournament of the 33 Peaks. Apparently, Leo wants to kill him. Zen will die if no one stops this fight, said another concerned disciple. No need to disturb Master Su. She is watching from over there, another disciple said as he pointed to a distant pavilion. When the disciples looked in the direction of the pavilion, they saw a beautiful young woman. Even from a distance, it was easy to recognize Master Su of Drizzle Peak. Although she had not reacted when Sean had first told her about the duel, Master Su had been very concerned about the fight between Zen and Leo. Master Su had taken great pains to ensure that Zen would join Drizzle Peak. She wouldn't give him up easily. According to the rules of Cloud Sect, disciples were allowed to resolve personal grudges by competing in the ring. Even if they killed each other, they were not held responsible. That was what worried Sean. However, not many people wanted to kill their opponents in the fight. Grudges were resolved when the opponent was defeated or humiliated. However, Leo seemed determined to kill Zen. Master Su didn't know for how long Zen would be able to defend against Leo's assault. She had hoped that Zen had gained sufficient experience through the extreme challenges that he had already faced. After all, she didn't want him to die. At that moment, she was in a very conflicted mood. Despite how the fight was going, she persuaded herself to calm down and see how Zen would cope with his strong rival. She gazed at Zen and frowned when she saw that burns covered his body. The skin on his arms, legs, chest, and neck had turned black. Zen looked miserable and embarrassed. The power of the Raging Thunder Fist was beyond Zen's expectation. While he had been able to mutate most of the pressure into warm currents that would rejuvenate his body, yet a portion of the thunder and lightning had hurt him a lot. At present, Zen was afraid that his body would fall apart under Leo's continuous fists. The spiritual thorn cultivation method that he had previously practiced couldn't take effect because Zen kept failing to catch Leo's figure as Leo moved as fast as lightning. Wham! Again, a heavy punch hit Zen in the chest. Carrying the astounding power of thunder and lightning, Leo's fist gnawed every inch of Zen's body. There were black stripes appearing on his skin and the scorched smell of roast meat emanating in the air. Finally, unable to bear his internal injuries, Zen spat out a mouthful of blood. Watching Zen with a sneering expression, Leo said, "I thought you were immortal. But, look at you now. Oh, poor kid. What are you babbling about? Just bring it on," gasped Zen as he got up from the ground despite the pain. Well, I'm not going to let you live to see tomorrow," stated Leo as he rubbed his hands impatiently. Several flashes of lightning flickering in his hands, obviously he decided to end this game of cat and mouse at once. At the same time, Zen felt something strange happening in his body. The warm currents generated by the external forces were changing their flow direction. The warm currents had been washing his organs, but now they seemed to be pouring into his bones. Are the warm currents cleansing my marrow? What's going on? Isn't it the symptom of marrow refining? Am I already at marrow refining level? Zen was totally confused. Streaks of green impurities leaked out of his burned skin. Those were contaminants in his marrow, the most obstinate, deeply hidden impurities in the human body. And one could only clean them at the marrow refining level. A refreshing coolness spread rapidly from Zen's tailbone to his lumbar and then upward to his neck. Then it spread into his eyes, ears, brain, every part of his body. He couldn't help closing his eyes to enjoy this marvelous feeling. At this peculiar sight, Leo paused. He squinted as he wondered why Zen was behaving like this. What is he doing? Does he plan to fight me with his eyes closed? Before Leo could figure it out, Zen opened his eyes. A smile grew on his face when Zen realized that his eyes were brighter than ever. He felt as though a new world had unfolded. Everything seemed clearer and magnified. He could see the veins in each tree leaf clearly and could also hear the distant whispers. It was absolutely impressive. Be it his eyesight, hearing or smelling, all his senses were greatly promoted. Don't be so mysterious. Do you intend to confuse me? Leo smiled coldly and said before he pounced at Zen again. Zen could easily see Leo's swift movement now. Leo had been circling Zen at high speed trying to confuse him. Then Leo attacked from the side all of a sudden. To counter the attack, Zen swiftly turned and grabbed Leo's arm firmly. A strong power burst out of his body as the two dragon scales in his mind radiated green light. Now that he was a marrow refiner, it was not difficult for Zen to block Leo's blow. By the time Leo was aware of the danger, Zen had locked his body tightly. Then following a heavy suplex, Leo was thrown to the ground. A loud thump echoed through the combat ring. The onlookers screamed in awe. The combat rings in Cloud Sect were made of hard iron to prevent being damaged by fighting disciples. However, Zen had tossed Leo with such force that a hollow appeared on the iron floor. Leo lay in the center of the hollow, motionless. Everyone watching the battle was astonished at how quickly the situation had turned. They had never imagined that after all his injuries Zen would be able to defeat Leo. Nori and Sean both breathed a long sigh of relief. Zen gasped in air and looked at Leo, who was still motionless. What a close call, Zen thought, still in shock. He had underestimated the skills of a refiner who was half step into the nature level. If he had not broken through at the critical moment, he would have been in grave danger. Just when everyone thought the fight was over, a thunderbolt shot out from Leo and pierced the sky. To everyone's surprise, Leo managed to get up from the pit. His expression was grim, and his hair stood on end. Thousands of bolts of snake-like lightning entwined on his body. The crowd gasped as Leo looked like the god of thunder. Good for you. I never expected to be defeated by a junior who is only at the organ refining level. So, I reluctantly decide to use my raging holy thunder. Clearly, Leo had pushed his life energy to the extreme. Many flashes accompanied his every movement. Raging holy thunder, shouted Leo with pride. I don't yet know he has successfully practiced raging holy thunder, someone in the audience said. The other onlookers began whispering when they heard the comment. Raging holy thunder is indeed powerful, but it comes at the expense of a cultivator's life energy. Fabulous. The raging holy thunder will help reinforce Leo's strength to the level of nature refining. Zen did a good job, but he is just at the organ refining level. He's screwed today. Hearing the crowd talking like that, Nori became nervous. He clenched his hands and began pacing. Zen was now at the marrow refining level, so he could hear the remarks of the crowd. He was frightened by what he had heard. Raging holy thunder was harder to deal with. Zen, I will tear you to pieces. Carrying thunder and lightning, Leo rushed toward Zen. Just so, the raging holy thunder greatly strengthened his vital life energy. But his speed has not improved essentially, thought Zen. Zen kept his eyes on Leo. He knew there would be new challenges and Zen wanted to observe Leo closely. Although Leo's raging holy thunder was formidable, Zen wasn't flustered at all. Because he still had a special cultivation method that hadn't been used. All he needed to do was calm down and concentrate. Spiritual thorn, shouted Zen. Just before Leo approached Zen, a sharp thorn condensed from soul shot out of the middle of Zen's brows and stabbed Leo's head instantly. Leo had hoped to quickly kill Zen with the help of the raging holy thunder. Because the raging holy thunder came at the expense of his life energy. It was powerful but it couldn't last long. He was shocked by Zen's invisible attack. A fierce twinge reached into Leo's soul. He couldn't help screaming, then he stumbled and fell. Fantastic. Before, Zen thought he had only got a smattering knowledge of the spiritual thorn. Hence, he didn't expect his attack to be so effective. The result of the attack on Leo's soul pleased Zen. What did you do to me? Leo stood up weakly, his body swayed with the effort to stand. He was in great pain, as though a long needle had punctured his head. Zen didn't answer. He stood in his spot and vigilantly watched Leo. After the severe headache slowly dissipated, Leo looked at Zen with awe. He didn't want to suffer from that kind of pain again, but he had to kill Zen today. Leo gritted his teeth and decided to use the raging holy thunder once again. Seeing Leo rushing toward him, Zen prepared to reuse his spiritual thorn. Just like the last time, a gray, sharp thorn silently stabbed Leo's brain. Bang! Leo fell after the attack. He rolled on the floor with his head in his arms. This time, Zen decided not to give Leo any chance to resist. A purple light enveloped his body. Then Zen kicked Leo with all his power. Leo was thrown out of the ring, like a heavy sandbag. He never got up again. Chapter 43. Stay calm. The lightning released from Leo gradually dissipated, and his life energy faded away. At the same time, the changes to Leo's body were clearly visible. His skin had wrinkled, and his hair had turned gray. Leo, who was in his 20s, looked like an older man, aged 30 or 40. The raging holy thunder was extremely powerful and overbearing, and its terrible power would turn against the cultivator. Zen was astonished when he saw the changes on Leo. The audience around the battle ring stared at Zen with a fearful expression. To them, it seemed as if he were a horrid, cruel man. This man had been a member of Drizzle Peak. For less than a month, he defeated Leo, who was ranked 30th among the outer disciples. The incredible fight and Leo's ultimate defeat had happened in front of them. What was more shocking was that Zen was only at the organ refining level. In time, once he entered the marrow refining level, or perhaps he took a half step into the nature level, wouldn't he be able to challenge a master at the nature level? Zen's power was unbelievable. Although no one spoke, they were all in awe of what Zen had accomplished. Regardless of whether this assumption was true or not, Zen's strength was far superior to any other disciple at the same level. It was an established fact. No one could deny that. Seeing that Leo had been defeated, and having borne witness to what had happened to Leo, he was furious. He felt restless, as though he needed to do something. He suddenly stretched out his right hand and roared at Nori with a crisp, authoritative tone, "Return the purple-blue sword to me." Not long ago, they gambled for the fight, that the winner could take the bet. Then Anthony gave his purple-blue sword, which was a top-grade mysterious weapon, as a bet to Nori. And also Zen handed his bet, hundreds of cubic crystals, to Nori. At that time, Anthony was certain that Leo would not lose. So, he lent the purple-blue sword to Leo without any hesitation. After all, the risk in this gamble was minimal. Anthony knew of Leo's skills, and he figured this battle would be an easy win for Leo. Of course, he would be happy to see that his purple-blue sword would bring him 50 pieces of cubic crystals after Leo won this battle. It seemed like a very safe bet at that time. He would have been a fool not to bet against Zen. The result, however, was unexpected. Anthony was dumbfounded at Zen's victory. The risk Anthony had taken blew up in his face. However, Anthony was too angry to care about any other things. He needed to get the purple-blue sword back. The sword belonged to him and he would not see it go to another person. Anthony's gaze was fixed on the purple-blue sword and Nori. Nori was a little nervous. He took 2 steps back in surprise, but he did not retreat. Then, he said stiffly, "Isn't the sword part of the bet? You've made a bet with your sword. Now that Leo has lost, the top-grade mysterious weapon belongs to Zen. This is my weapon, I just lent it to Leo. I don't care if Zen won or lost. You want a mysterious weapon, then ask Leo." A top-grade mysterious weapon was a precious object for outer disciples. Reasoning did not seem to work with Anthony. His only thought was to get his weapon back. Zen suddenly stepped forward and grabbed the sword. Then he turned to Anthony and said, "This is what I won from Leo. If you want it back, I suggest you ask Leo." "No, the purple-blue sword is." Anthony began countering Zen's argument. However, he got anxious and couldn't finish. Zen stared at Anthony with cold eyes and said, "Well, if you don't accept your loss, I shall have to use force." Zen's words shut Anthony up. Anthony was also talented. He ranked 35th among the outer disciples. However, Leo, who was ranked in the 30th place, had been defeated by Zen. How could Anthony afford to compete with Zen? Did he have a chance to win? No, he didn't. Anthony could only stay quiet at Zen's threat. However, he couldn't let go of his sword. It seemed that he could only vent his anger at Leo. Thomas Zhu, who had been watching the battle, shook his head when he saw that Leo had been defeated. He whispered, "Garbage," and then turned away. Before he stepped away, a sword plunged into the ground in front of Thomas. The purple-blue sword swayed in front of Thomas, blocking his way. "Was it you who incited Leo to challenge me?" asked Zen as he strolled toward Thomas. He placed himself in front of Thomas and stared coldly at him. Thomas chuckled, "So what? What are you going to do? I am from the Zoog clan. Can anyone here afford to offend the Zoog family? My master sentenced you to death. And so, you should die. I am here to make sure you die quickly. I suggest you write your last words and prepare for the funeral before it's too late." "Zoog clan, who are you in the Zoog family?" Zen ignored Thomas's outburst and asked. "Me." The fat on Thomas's face shook, and his smile grew even more confident. "It doesn't hurt to tell you. I am a close servant of the 3rd son of the Zoog clan." "The 3rd son of the Zoog clan? The 3rd son of the Zoog clan is involved in this matter. When did Zen provoke the Zoog family?" "The 3rd son is a madman," someone in the crowd said. Then, the others started to talk about it. Apparently, many people present had heard about the notorious 3rd son. Formerly known as Fren, the 3rd son in the Zoog family had been nicknamed as Fren the Loony. Fren's ruthless and tyrannical behavior had earned him this nickname. He was always furious and presumptuous. And so everyone started to call him Fren the Loony. Oh, the expression in Zen's eyes changed, and his face became more serious as he remarked, "Friend's servant. What great fame for you. Good prestige. How dare you instigate internal battles in Drizzle Peak?" As with any other peaks, Drizzle Peak saw its share of infighting. But these struggles were internal affairs. Now that another peak had stepped into Drizzle Peak's internal affairs, all disciples would unite. In fact, the other 32 peaks at Cloud Sect were like this, too. Everyone fought behind closed doors. But once they got involved in a fight outside, they united against their common enemy. Unparalleled and consistent. Thomas had instigated Leo to attack Zen. This interference was taboo and a violation of laws. This was not allowed to happen here. Therefore, Zen's observation drew the hostility of Drizzle Peak's disciples. Thomas was hurled into the spotlight. An unfriendly expression grew on the faces of the spectators. Once the thought clicked in everyone's mind, they all banded together against Thomas. Even though Drizzle Peak was ranked the last among the other peaks, the disciples still felt a strong sense of loyalty toward their peak and peers. Fren was powerful, and the Zoog family was certainly a giant among the noble clans. Did the power of the Zoog family mean that the disciples of Drizzle Peak could be bullied? What angered the spectators even more was that Thomas was only a slave to Fren. He was not even a disciple at Cloud Sect. Thomas was very calm. To him, these outer disciples were a group of rabble. He was confident that when they heard Fren's name, they would be scared and they would kneel before him. He sneered, "I am arrogant. So what? I did it. I instigated Leo to pick a fight. What can you do?" "What can I do?" Zen turned and sought Sean from among the crowd. Then he asked aloud, "Sean, will I be held responsible for teaching him a lesson?" Sean walked out of the crowd and took a look at Thomas. Then he said, "This person is only a slave to the Zoog family. He is not a disciple of Cloud Sect. He provoked us to attack each other in Drizzle Peak. Of course, we must teach him a lesson. Even the masters will support us." "Well, good." A smile spread on Zen's face as Sean finished. Zen walked toward Thomas slowly. "You, stop there, what are you going to do?" Realizing the danger from Zen, Thomas took a few steps back and shouted in a high, thin voice, "I am Fren's servant. If you dare to touch me, my master will take you, Before Thomas could finish, Zen reached out as quick as a lightning bolt, twisted his thick neck, and pressed his neck on the blade of the purple-blue sword. Then, Zen put a foot on his back and said in an even tone, "Finish that sentence. I dare you. If I touch you, what will your master do to me?" The sharp blade of the purple-blue sword was pressed on Thomas's neck. If Zen pushed even a little bit forward, Thomas would be decapitated. Thomas's face flushed. His eyes were fixed on the sharp sword. Screaming like a pig being killed echoed through the battle ring. His lips trembled so much that he couldn't say a word. Soon the smell of urine permeated the air. Thomas had peed himself. At this time, an outer disciple stepped forward. He reached out and held the purple-blue sword's blade with 2 fingers. "Zen, this person serves Fren. If you kill him, I'm afraid your actions will be difficult to explain to Fren. You can't afford to offend the Zoog family. Why not let him go? I believe that Fren will also let this issue pass," the outer disciple rationalized. He was dark-skinned, not tall but stocky. Zen did not intend to kill Thomas. But he was angry that an outsider would come to Drizzle Peak and incite a fight between him and Leo. Moreover, after Leo's defeat, Thomas was still arrogant and superior. Although Zen would not kill him, he did want to teach him a lesson. But when the outer disciple stepped out and suggested that Zen acknowledge the power and influence of the Zoog family, the situation changed. Zen began considering killing Thomas. "Why should I care if my actions are easy or hard to explain to Fren? I'm not his servant." Zen stared at the outer disciple and asked in a cold voice. While it seemed as though the outer disciple was giving valuable advice to Zen's advantage, he was, in fact, pressuring Zen to bow to the Zoog family. Zen could see that he was trying to help the Zoog family. Zen hated it when people tried to curry favor with noble clans. Before the outer disciple could answer Zen, Thomas, who was still at Zen's mercy, screamed, "Liam, don't stand on ceremony with him. Help me kill him. Kill Zen and my master will reward you." Liam Sao was ranked 15th among the outer disciples at Drizzle Peak. Though he was just half step into the nature level, Liam was stronger than Leo. Regardless of his power, Liam could not mingle with children from noble clans like Fren easily because of his background. However, Liam Sao had maintained good relationships with clansmen from the offshoot branches of the Zoog family. The purpose of Liam's intervention on Thomas's behalf was to earn favor with Fren. If things went according to plan, this would be a good opportunity for him to be connected with Fren. Zen, I respect you for being a newcomer. You are talented, you defeated Leo, which I admire. So I gave you advice that was well-intentioned. I have shown you the right way to deal with this matter. Don't make things worse. Seeing that his words hadn't changed Zen's mind, Liam's tone suddenly hardened. He never thought that Zen would be so proud and unreasonable. Oh, really? What is the right way? What will make things worse? I don't like nonsense. If you don't agree with me, then face me in the battle ring, Zen retorted. Settling disputes in the battle ring is not the only way to solve a problem. I suggest that both of you compromise. Then the situation will not escalate, another disciple interjected. Zen turned to the disciple who had just spoken only to find a man with a big, fat face smiling at him. Worth, are you here to poke your nose into my business? Liam's expression showed the agitation he felt when he saw Worth. The fat man, Worth Zhang, was ranked 7th among the outer disciples at Drizzle Peak. From among the 10,000 outer disciples, he was definitely a top master. As a grin spread across Worth's face, 2 front teeth were revealed. Well, your business. I don't accept what you just said. Liam, I know that you have a good relationship with the Zug family, but you should not support this servant. The slave is spoiled and defiant. He is proud of being a slave of the Zug family. His behavior is superior and supercilious. He seems to forget that he is just a slave. Even a slave to the emperor's family is still a slave. He shouldn't feel superior to other people. In my opinion, killing him is too harsh. But we should not let him go easily either. How about this? Zen, you can teach him a lesson with your fist. It is better that both of you make some concessions on this matter. Worth Zhang had made an interesting point. A faint smile grew on Zen's face. Although Worth seemed to be fair and unselfish, anybody could see that he was feigning fairness. He was actually helping Zen. Most people understood that Zen would not kill Thomas. But they knew that Zen was angry and that he had a temper. They also knew that he needed to maintain his power and prestige. As a result of Worth's explanation, Zen now had the opportunity to hit Thomas, even though it sounded like both sides had reached a compromise. Liam clenched his teeth and then stepped away. Liam was already somewhat jealous and fearful of the strength that Zen had shown to all, and now Worth was officious. Liam was unable to protect Thomas. Zen, now you can teach Thomas a lesson, said Worth. A sly smile grew on Worth's face as he stressed on the word, lesson. Zen nodded and seized the back of Thomas's neck. At that moment, Thomas's eyes flashed red. Zen, if you beat me to death, my master will destroy you and your family, and grind your bones to dust. Zen shook his head calmly. He was so tired of these hollow threats. Couldn't they think of something new to threaten him with? He flipped his palms and slapped Thomas. Then he landed a mighty blow on Thomas's chest. Thomas suddenly flew back and rolled on the ground. Seeing this, everyone was surprised. They felt the punishment inflicted on Thomas was too mild. Zen should beat him harder. Thomas got up from the ground. Instead of showing the convergence necessary, he kept threatening Zen. He didn't seem injured. To the crowd's surprise, just as he stood up straight, a dull explosion sounded from within his body. Puff, poo ff. 4 holes sprayed blood from his hands and feet. Thomas screamed and fell to the floor. What a good blow. Well done, Zen. This idiot deserved that. He dared to cause trouble in Drizzle Peak. Just see how his life ends. From among the spectators, several people looked at Zen and cheered him with words of praise. But most were silent. They didn't echo the sentiment of the cheering people. They knew that this matter would not come to a good end. Fren was not known to be kind and reasonable. On the other hand, Zen was not from a noble clan. He was helpless. He had no one, and no clan would protect him. They believed that he wouldn't stay in Drizzle Peak for long. You just entered Cloud Sect, and you've already offended the Zug family. Aren't you afraid? Worth asked, with a smile. Zen smiled. He was not afraid of anything. He turned to Worth and said, I have offended many powerful and talented people. It's awful, but I have been used to it. That's a waste of time wondering about this. I have a long way to go. Good point. You got a heroic spirit. Courage is the most essential trait of a hero. How about we have a drink to celebrate? Worth suggested. Zen did not say much. He grabbed Nori and Sean and then followed Worth. Along the way, they joked and chatted freely with each other, as if they were old friends. Standing in a small building not far away, Master Su breathed a sigh of relief. She had been anxious about the fight and the tense situation down there. Zen was indeed not easily defeated. She always knew that he was not what he seemed. Not only did he beat Leo, but he had also offended the Zug family, a powerful noble clan. This was beneficial for him. Master Su believed that a person only made rapid progress when under extreme pressure. The Zug family would retaliate now. Master Su's eyes blinked as she dwelled on that thought for a moment. I need to stand up for him. Lady Autumn from Zug family owes me a favor. Master Su now had a plan. Chapter 44. The Cold Hard Fact. Worth Zhang was ranked 7th of the outer disciples at Drizzle Peak. His experience and influence earned respect and high regard of Nori, Shan, and Zen. As the four shared the wine, the spirit turned jovial and mellow. Nori and Shan chatted with the self-effacing predecessor, Worth. I watched your display of marrow refinement skills in the battle ring, Zen, said Worth, as he tipped his cup back and drained the wine. Zen glanced at Worth and answered, Worth, you are quite discerning. What, Zen, you have refined your marrow, exclaimed Nori, unable to contain himself. Nodding, Zen related, I probably would have lost to Leo if I hadn't reached the marrow refining level at the right time. Shaking his head, Worth complimented, the way I see it, Zen, you will be our mainstay so long as you perfect the skills your talent warrants. Worth, you're exaggerating, I'm nothing more than a novice compared to the masters at our peak. Zen commented, maintaining a degree of decorum. Zen, aren't you being too modest? Have you heard the legend of Lady Peak? Asked Worth as he looked around with an air of mystery. Lady Peak is ranked 17th among the peaks at the Cloud Sect and consists of only women disciples. Because of the wine, Shan was loosening up, becoming more talkative but remaining sober, thanks to his refining level. Despite the overindulgence, the four present were far from a drunken stupor, and the ambiance remained light and festive. Smiling, Worth went on, Lady Peak is 17th ranked peak this year but is second to Skytop Peak in the previous years. Shan had been at the Cloud Sect a year longer than Zen and Nori. He was also less informed on and blurted, what? A peak with female disciples ranking higher than men. In my humble opinion, they couldn't overshadow us. In Shan's mind, men no doubt prevailed over women in the development of martial arts skills. Shan, there's something you don't know, and that is, it was a female disciple who contributed to Lady Peak's ranking and influence, explained Worth smiling. And with her endowments, she supposedly overshadowed the rest of the peaks except Skytop Peak. Added Zen. Bravo, bellowed Worth as he applauded before elaborating, you hit the nail on the head there, Zen. She has an unearthly beauty and is extremely endowed, rising to fame in the 2 years after her admission to the Cloud Sect. So don't be modest, I believe in you, you can strive to accomplish as much as her, Zen. Unfortunately for her, she was framed and is suffering within the bowels of Torture Mountain now. What's her name? Asked Nori, curious to learn the female disciple's name after hearing Worth's engaging account. Her surname is Luo, the same as Zen. Her given name though is Yan, added Worth grinning. Crunch. Seething with resentment, Zen noticed he was crushing his Celadon wine glass until the liquid was streaming down his hand. His three companions looked at Zen in shock. What's wrong, Zen? Asked Nori, thinking a moment, he then continued, do you know Yan? The others suspected there was a connection between Zen and Yan, but Worth was the only one to ask Zen if Yan was his younger sister. It was the first time Zen heard news of Yan since entering the Cloud Sect. When Zen had spoken to Shan another time, he asked about Hell Mountain, but not about Yan. Yan was always Zen's biggest worry, and he was stirred up at Worth's reference to his poor younger sister. Ignoring Worth's question, Zen stared at him and asked why Yan was in exile in Hell Mountain. Seeing the look of concern on Zen's face, Worth took a serious tone. There was a rumor that aside from her talent and beauty, Yan holds peculiar lineage. She was pursued by the Cloud Sect playboys, in particular by one named Fancy who was ranked 700th on the Cloud Sect chart. The Cloud Sect chart, repeated Zen. Since he never heard of it, Zen urged Worth to elaborate. I got surprised. No one told you about the Cloud Sect chart, Zen? Worth questioned in surprise. Cutting in, Shan added his explanation. The Cloud Sect chart is a ranking list of the 1,000 top disciples. Okay, it makes sense, Zen said nodding. This fellow, Fancy, must be excellent to hold the 700th rank in the chart. Thought Zen. Then, eager to find out more of what happened, he stated, Worth, don't let me interrupt, please, continue. Worth continued weaving the tale. As far as I am concerned, Yan was provoked, and castrated Fancy, which had the Yun clan, one of the top 7 noble clans, in an uproar. The Yun leader has only 2 sons and he asked the Cloud sect to deal with the incident. The leader at Lady Peak, in deference to Yun leader, had no choice but to exile Yan to Perdition Mountain. Actually, it was more like a last resort to save Yan's life. Hearing about the ill treatment his younger sister received made Zen furious beyond measure, and he instinctively dug his fingers into the table. As they watched Zen's reaction, his 3 buddies understood Zen's indignation. At that moment though, Zen was losing the composure he managed to hold earlier, leading to his victory against Leo. But then Zen always was too quick to react when it involved his sister, Yan. The Yun clan. Now that Zen heard the name, the 3 words were burned into his mind. Among the top 7 noble clans, the Yun clan was the 3rd uppermost clan in the imperial capital. After mulling over what he learned, Zen thought, most likely, this guy, Fancy, took liberties with Yan, driving her to act out of desperation, based on the sparse details Worth gave. I am bound to utilize my consummate skills to exterminate the Yun clan, avenging my younger sister, vowed Zen silently. Hey, Zen, are you alright? Asked Nori, genuinely concerned for Zen, and worried Zen might doom himself by acting as desperately as Yan once had. Zen pushed the thoughts about his sister's plight away for now, and forced a smile. Yes, I'm okay, everything's fine, and it's nothing serious. But, how am I going to rescue Yan from within mountain? Wondered Zen aloud, intent on saving his younger sister. Worth went on, Chair Shui, an inner disciple here at the sect, was sentenced to 4 years mountain, but received a reprieve after he paid a fine of 4,000 points. If I spend 1,000 points, they'll shave a year off Yan's suffering. Zen was determined about that. As he thought about the prospect of being able to help lessen his sister's sentence, Zen's face lit up, and now more hopeful, Zen asked, how long was Yan sentenced to? Knowing he had to be truthful, Worth inhaled deeply, and as he sighed, he said solemnly, she was sentenced to serve 1,000 years. The words swirled in Zen's brain, and he deliberated, how could they do this to Yan? 1,000 years mountain, wow, 1,000 years hinders my plans. As he weighed his options, Zen started feeling overwhelmed by a growing sense of hopelessness. Cold, hard fact was that Zen would need over 1,000,000 points to free his sister, Yan, from her purgatory mountain. Such a punishment was too grave for a young girl like Yan to be given. The Cloud sect was condemning her to live out the remainder of her life there. Subsequently, as Zen's thoughts lingered on Yan, his hatred toward the Cloud sect grew. Sensing that Zen was seething over his sister's plight, and seeing the anger spark in Zen's eye at what the management did, Worth immediately tried to appease him by stating, the top 7 noble clans bind the Cloud sect, and important matters are at the discretion of the privileged. Still, Yan's case evoked sympathy, especially in the 2 masters from Lady Peak. They worked tirelessly and vigorously appealing her case, and in the end, it cost them, and they were forced to resign. At Worth's words, Zen expressed that it angered him when anyone perpetrated evil and thanked his friend, Worth, for the reminder. With the light tone of the night gone, and the hour growing late, the dinner party ended and the 4 dispersed. To let off the steam of his pent-up frustrations, Zen headed straight to the exercise room. I'm too weak to rescue Yan, for the time being, at least. Reflected Zen, dwelling on his inability to save his younger sister. Getting into the Cloud sect was just one small step in Zen's plans to save Yan. It was Worth's reminder that made Zen realize he had horrible enemies to confront, and they could effortlessly smash him like an ant. Crumble, crush, crash, all that remained of the statues of human figures and dumbbells were rumble blanketing the floor and dust covering his hands, reducing the exercise room to a ruin. After working out for a few hours, Zen left the exercise room feeling re-energized and much calmer after venting his anger through the intense, violent session. Early the next morning, Zen climbed Drizzle Peak's ridge to where the masters lived. To get assigned to restricted tasks he wanted, Zen was told he needed to speak to the masters. Chapter 45. An Angry Master Su. The sound of a pen, scritching, across the paper in a hurry, was all that could be heard in Master Su's room. Sitting at her desk writing, Master Su didn't look as tired as she felt. Instead, she looked as beautiful as an ethereal and delicate as a fairy in her rich purple gown adorned with embroidered clouds. Glancing at the pile of work stacked on her desk, Aura Su clenched her jaw, rolling her eyes in disdain. With several of Drizzle Peak's masters off today, she was left to handle it all herself. Master Su was well aware that the work was left to her on purpose. Did they really think she would surrender just because of the heavy workload? Never. While Master Su was engrossed in the task at hand, Zen appeared in the doorway and saw the purple figure bent over the desk. He knocked on the door. Rap, rap, rap. The sound startled Master Su, and her head shot up. Zen's appearance was unexpected and she was caught off guard. Her face took on an unnatural hue briefly, and she quickly recovered and asked, "Hello Zen, what can I do for you?" Stepping into the room, Zen replied, "Hello Master Su, I am here to claim some assignments." "Assignments?" asked Master Su as she blinked. She smiled as she looked up at him. "Actually, you don't need to be so eager. The outer disciples will soon be given some pills, and that should be plenty for you to use to refine yourself." Ordinarily, there was no rush for a new outer disciple recruit to do a task. Since the outer disciples' strength was relatively low right now, even if they accepted a task, it would only be simple ones they would be able to manage. Because the points for these simple tasks were relatively small, and the loss outweighed the rewards, it was better to train at Drizzle Peak. Shaking his head in disagreement, Zen said, "I don't want pills, what I need are points." Since he had a body as strong as a mysterious weapon, Zen ignored the conventional pills. He knew the Cloud sect was rich. After all, even the pills that the outer disciples received were much better quality than the ones other families had. But, regardless of how good the pills were, they weren't better than the magical pill. When Zen was being beaten, it was as if he was taking a magical pill. So, naturally, he didn't need any pills. "What's the rush to obtain points?" asked Master Su. "I just need the points," asserted Zen, thinking about how his need went far beyond a rush to get them, as Master Su said. He needed 1,000,000 points. Naturally, acquiring that many points would take a reasonably long time, and at this stage, he was still working at getting his first 100 points. In his current situation, he lacked the resources and forced to rescue Yan from Hell Mountain, but perhaps he could visit her, right? Seeing how stubborn Zen was, Master Su remained silent. Reaching out, she opened a pamphlet that was lying next to her and handed it to Zen. Then, in a crisp tone, she said, "This pamphlet contains the most elementary tasks, choose one of them." Examining the booklet closely, Zen discovered that the tasks were all handwritten. Serve the Li family in the imperial capital by taking care of the house. 3 days, 3 points. Serve as a bodyguard to help the Hao escort agency in transporting cargo. 7 days, 7 points. Quote. Seeing the point amounts took Zen's breath away. The rewards for each task was too small, and at 1 point a day, it would take well over 3 months to accumulate 100 points to perform these tasks. At this rate, it would take 1,000,000 days for Zen to earn enough points to rescue his sister, Yan, performing tasks like these. "What, not enough points being offered for you? At first, you might think that, but you get used to it after a while," commented Master Su, smiling brilliantly. Although her smile appeared sweet, Zen saw the shrewd look of a businessman behind her eyes. The fact of the matter was that the number of points wasn't too small, considering that 3 points could be converted to 6 cubic crystals, which was a tremendous sum of money to some families. What was more, since the Cloud sect received a portion for expenses, they actually spent more money on these tasks. "Are there any tasks that offer more points?" inquired Zen. "Yes, there are. But unfortunately, you can't accept them," remarked Master Su while waving her hand dismissively. All Zen had on his mind was how many points there were. He didn't care whether or not he was able to accept them. Hurriedly, Zen asked, "How do you know that, if I haven't tried? Can I at least look at them?" While the request was unorthodox and even unreasonable, Master Su produced a second pamphlet, placing it in front of him. Not bothering to check out what each task was, Zen looked at the row of points, and saw that the first task offered 200 points. Glancing over to what was required, Zen's first reaction was shock. The assignment is to hunt a shadow beast, skin it, and bring back the whole hide intact. In the eastern part of the eastern region, shadow beasts were a unique species that lived in the shadow forest. Since the species was less fertile, they were rare. But, the strength of a single beast was so fierce, that it was rumored if someone at the nature refining level hunted one of these creatures, they would find it almost impossible to make it back alive. Skimming the next task, Zen saw the reward was 200 points. This time the requirement was to track and apprehend an infamous prisoner who escaped many years ago. The tasks in this pamphlet were beyond Zen's capabilities. Even though it seemed senseless, Zen continued to scan the pages and came on another task. There was no set amount for this task. Instead, it offered a range between a single point and many thousands of points. Reading this task through carefully, Zen noted the mission was to resist an insect assault. Insect attacks were a big problem plaguing the southern part of the empire. From April to May every year, a massive influx of blade locusts carried devastating disasters to the south. There was no such thing as simple where blade locusts were concerned. Unlike common insects, each blade locust was the size of a human adult. In order to resist an invasion of blade locusts, the empire dispatched large numbers of troops yearly to travel south and eliminate them. But, the empire's forces weren't enough, and many were sent south from the cloud sect too. That was why the task was offered in the pamphlet. For killing 20 blade locusts, you receive a point. If you slay a blade locust leader, you will get another point. Zen calculated the numbers in his head quickly. Shortly after that, he said, Master Su, I'd like to accept the task of repelling an insect invasion. When Master Su heard Zen, she gave a subtle yet sly grin and blinked in an exaggerated manner while she asked, You're wise to pick that task. It's the only task in that pamphlet you're able to handle, isn't it? Zen smiled but didn't deny it. He couldn't afford to care about how he earned the points, Zen just needed to obtain them. A moment ago, Master Su was still laughing, but as quickly, her face changed. No, don't go. The smile on Zen's face was stiff as he asked, Why not? Do you believe it's easy to kill blade locusts? Some refiners who were half-step into the nature level accepted this task, but only 40% of them came back. Did you know that? Demanded Master Su as she stared deep into Zen's eyes. With the strength that Zen possessed, how would he kill blade locusts? He would die. I know, replied Zen as he nodded firmly. Great, said Master Su, as she nodded back. Satisfied, Master Su reached to take the book from Zen. When Zen saw her reaching for it, he gripped the pamphlet. That doesn't change the fact that I need to take this task. Suddenly, Master Su burst into laughter so hard that tears rolled down her face and gracelessly, she chided, You know squat. In any event, don't go. Furrowing his brows, Zen's eyes were dark and grave as he said in an earnest timbre, Master Su, I know you're only thinking about my safety, but I really need to earn points. So, I have no choice but to accept the task at hand, whether you want me to or not. Looking up into Zen's eyes, Aura Su saw how serious he was. Her beautiful eyes shone with intense color as well as skepticism. Why are you so zealous to get points? Reluctant to tell her, Zen pursed his lips and shook his head. He stood as motionless as a wooden pestle. Even if she wouldn't assign him the task, Zen wasn't ready to leave. No, then, you can't take on this task, snapped Aura. This guy was as stubborn as a mule. But, Master Su, I must accept this assignment, repeated Zen as the pitch of his voice rose in a panic-like sound. Not wanting to argue with Zen, Master Su picked up her pen, bent her head back over the work littering her desk, and resumed working. That only left Zen one option, and he would kill time waiting. For the whole day, the two shared the space, but neither shared any more words. Busy with her work, Master Su treated Zen as though he didn't exist. Standing next to her, motionless, Zen resembled a statue. This strange situation lasted through the day and into the evening. Finally, Master Su moved and gave Zen a sharp look. In all honesty, when Master Su met Zen, she liked him very much. Now though, she felt disgusted. It was true that Zen's strength, the speed of his progress and his tenacity facing enemies were all outstanding traits. It seemed to Master Su that Zen wanted the task as soon as possible so he could train and prove himself faster. This wasn't wrong, but Master Su thought Zen was too eager for instant gratification. As Master Su prepared to leave for the day, she continued ignoring Zen and headed toward the door. Just when she got to the door, Master Su spun around and flung a shiny token at Zen. Go ahead, if you want to die. Nobody's standing in your way. Master Su was proud that she could spot talent by sight. She knew from the start that Zen's strength was much more than he had shown. Still, insect invasions were deadly. Among them were not only normal blade locusts but there were also much more powerful creatures, increasing the likelihood of Zen perishing from wounds. If Master Su remained calm, she could talk Zen out of taking part in this task. The problem was Zen was too eager for instant rewards and success, which annoyed Master Su, and she wasn't able to stay calm. Throwing the token at Zen was just an act of emotion, and women were known to be emotionally driven creatures. Immediately, Master Su regretted snapping at Zen. After all, he was the disciple she worked so hard to get into her peak, and it was counterproductive to let him go off to die. Turning her head with the intention of speaking to Zen, she saw Zen's beaming face, thrilled at the sight of the token, which sparked her temper once more, and she shot Zen an angry look and disappeared through the courtyard. Not being a fool, Zen knew very well he had made Master Su mad. But he couldn't be concerned about that right now. He needed to earn points so he could save his sister, Yan. Chapter 46. Blue Sky Parking Ground. Later that night, Zen took out Anthony's purple-blue sword and examined it. The sword was aesthetic and of good quality. Its scabbard was inlaid with colorful gems and gold threads. Since the sword was well preserved, Zen could see that Anthony had taken great care of it. As Zen pulled the blade out of the scabbard, a whoosh sound filled the silence in the room. When the blade was free of its casing, the sword emanated a purple and blue light. What a good sword! It was a top-grade mysterious weapon. The sword looked like it was at the same level as Evil Land's Hellfire Sword. But Zen felt that the sword's quality was much better than that of Fire Sword. He hesitated a little. It was a pity that such a good sword had to be melted. Anthony had asked his friends to talk with Zen. He wanted to recover his sword, but Zen categorically refused him. To improve his strength, Zen had to offer the sword to the Cyan Dragon. Zen frowned thoughtfully as he gazed at the sword. A while later, Zen had made his decision. Without hesitating further, he began to communicate with the furnace in his mind. The black flame shot out of his brow and headed straight for the purple-blue sword. The black flame was so quick that a strange arc was drawn in the air. The sword was like firewood. It burned from point to pommel in an instant. When the black flame thoroughly devoured the sword, a few drops of molten iron essence were left behind. In the dimly lit room, these drops of molten iron gave off a brilliant light. Zen counted the particles of the molten iron essence. His eyes lit up with the number. He murmured, "The purple-blue sword is at the same level as Fire Sword, but it gave 10 drops of hot metal essence." What a surprise! He couldn't explain why this had happened. What was more, Zen had not yet figured out what the hot metal essence was for. Zen had gone through all the ancient books on weapon refining in Evil Land's Space Ring, but he could not find anything about the origin and usage of molten iron essence. Since this was still a mystery to Zen, he had decided to visit weapon refining masters as they might have some explanations for the essence of the molten metal. After the black flame sent the 10 drops of iron to the Cyan Dragon's mouth, bright green light burst out from 2 gray scales on the dragon. After the light dissipated, Zen found that another 2 dragon scales had been activated. So far, 4 dragon scales had lit up on the Cyan Dragon. Zen clenched his fist and felt the new power surge through him. Earlier, he had reached the marrow refining level. Adding the strength of the 4 dragon scales, Zen would now have the power to fight against a cultivator at the nature level. Later that night, Zen completed his preparations. At dawn the next day, he left Drizzle Peak quietly. Zen hadn't told his friends about his plans. If they knew he had accepted such a dangerous mission, they would feel bound to stop him. Zen knew what he had to do and he was unwilling to waste any more time discussing the subject with others. What Zen didn't notice was that a man was watching Zen as he left his room. The tall, dark-skinned man was Liam Sao, with whom Zen had a dispute several days ago, because Liam supported Thomas of the Zug clan. After the fight, Liam Sao sent Thomas back. At that time, he was ordered to spy on Zen. Fren, one of the most gifted children of the Zug clan, had asked him to follow Zen. Fren had instructed Liam to inform him if Zen left Drizzle Peak. Liam was thrilled as he would now be able to avenge himself. When Liam noticed Zen leave Drizzle Peak in the morning, he was happy that the opportunity had finally come. He inconspicuously followed Zen. After trailing Zen for a while, Liam realized that Zen was headed to the east of Cloud Sect. He had thought that Zen was leaving Cloud Sect, but there was no exit to the east. He felt confused about Zen's plans. It didn't take Zen long to walk to the Blue Sky Parking Ground. That was when Liam realized that Zen must have accepted the mission of shielding against insect aggression. Several days ago, insects began flooding the Empire. Cloud Sect had tasked many disciples with killing these blade locusts. Since the insect infestation was in the southern part of the Empire, it would take the disciples a long time to cross the mountains and rivers by foot. The journey was so long that if disciples traveled by foot, the insect aggression would probably be over by the time the disciples arrived. Therefore, most disciples use the blue sky parking ground to reach their destination quicker. There were gigantic flying chariots in Cloud Sect, and the blue sky parking ground was the place where the gigantic flying chariots parked. The chariot was so quick that it would take only a day to reach the southern part of the empire. Now that Zen had stopped at the blue sky parking ground, it must mean that he was also going south to kill the blade locusts. Liam wondered why Zen was in a hurry to take a task that seemed beyond his ability. "Since you're in such a hurry to die, I'll give you a hand." With a cold smile on his face, Liam retreated slowly. He would report the matter to Friend first. The blue sky parking ground was a man-made square landing pad, about 10 feet high. When Zen climbed up the steps, he found that many Cloud Sect disciples were waiting. They were at the blue sky parking ground for the same purpose as Zen. They had all accepted the task of destroying the insect aggression as ordered by Cloud Sect. Most of the disciples were dressed in black robes, and only a few wore white robes. Everyone looked powerful and aggressive. Apparently, they had been forged in the sea of blood and had improved their power through life and death experience. Regardless of whether it was an outer disciple in a white robe or an inner disciple in a black robe, when they saw Zen, astonishment flashed in their eyes. What surprised them was not that there was anything special about Zen, but that he was only at the marrow refining level. His cultivation level was too low for this task. The mission of shielding against the insect aggression was not easy. For starters, blade locusts attacked in large numbers. If that wasn't daunting enough, each locust was extremely strong. What was scarier was that they didn't fear death. Even in the face of several strong men, many desperate blade locusts would dash ahead and lay siege on their enemies regardless of their safety. Even a cultivator who was a half step into the nature level was likely to be killed by the blade locusts if he didn't pay attention to their siege. So the minimum eligibility for accepting this task was that the disciple be a half-step cultivator into the nature level. But now a person at the marrow refining level had been accepted for the task. It was thus normal for them to have such a strange reaction. Zen ignored the astonished look on these people. He found a corner on the blue sky parking ground, sat down, and closed his eyes. Opposite Zen stood 4 or 5 inner disciples. As they whispered among each other, they shot several glances at Zen. Their voices were neither too loud nor too low. It was just at the right level for Zen to hear clearly. Apparently, they were speaking at that level on purpose. Since when can a cultivator at the marrow refining level accept such a dangerous mission? There are many different kinds of people in the world. It is folly to assume that some people are in a hurry to find a way to die. Some people simply overestimate themselves. "Hey, I'm going to tease him." After making that statement, one disciple walked toward Zen. The tall, strong man strolled up to Zen, studied him up and down, and said, "Hey, boy, are you going to kill blade locusts too?" Zen opened his eyes, stared at the strong man, and said, "Is there a problem?" "Ha ha," the strong man gave out a queer laugh. "You're just at the marrow refining level. Considering your strength, I'm afraid you'll be split into 2 by the blade locusts." "Oh," Zen answered simply. Then he closed his eyes again. Seeing Zen's reaction, the strong man knew that his intimidation did not seem to have any effect. He took a closer look at Zen and saw the token on his waist. He stretched forth his hand to take the token. Just as the strong man was about to grab the token, Zen's eyes flew open. Quickly, he grasped the strong man's arm. In the next moment, Zen used the momentum of his body to position himself behind the strong man agilely. Before the disciple could blink, Zen had grabbed him by his neck and pressed the broken flying knife against his neck. Although the knife was broken, it looked sharp, as if it could cut anything in the world. The strong man shivered as the cold from the flying knife's blade spread through his body. The strong man's friends were frightened when they saw this. They did not expect the unremarkable boy to be fierce enough to defeat the strong man in a blink. "Hey, bro, we're all disciples of Cloud Sect. Don't hurt him, please. Take it easy, boy." Gordon was just joking. The strong man's friends tried to placate Zen. "Is he acquainted with me? Why did he want to take my token?" Zen asked with a straight face. One of Gordon's friends said, "I'm sorry. This is all Gordon's fault. Let him go, please. He meant no harm." "Gordon, come on, make an apology quickly." Gordon had never been more scared in his life. He could feel that Zen was intent on killing him. If he had really attacked this boy, Gordon would have been dead by now. His voice trembled as he said, I'm sorry. I was just kidding. I didn't mean to offend you." Hearing Gordon's words, Zen took away his knife and put it back in the space ring. He took a few steps back without saying a word. However, his expression conveyed the skepticism he was feeling. Although Zen had become a disciple of the Cloud sect, he had not stopped being vigilant. Since stepping into Cloud sect, many people had secretly plotted against him. These experiences helped Zen understand that the law of the jungle was still being followed in this holy land of martial arts. Big fish ate little fish. If he wanted to survive, he needed to get stronger. The strong man sighed with relief when Zen stepped back. Gently, he touched his neck with his hands. Then he looked at Zen with admiration. Gordon wasn't the kind of person to hold a grudge. As he looked at Zen, a broad smile spread across his face. He said, "Hi, my name is Gordon. The 5 of us are a team. We specialize in hunting blade locusts. The blade locusts prefer to attack in groups. So if you are alone, you will be in trouble." Zen didn't respond to the strong man's words. The strong man continued, "Well, to tell you the truth, if you want to hunt for blade locusts, you'd better team up with a few people to avoid being surrounded by the blade locusts. Why don't you join us?" Zen rejected his suggestion with an emphatic shake of his head. "Thanks, I'm used to being alone." After that Zen looked for another corner. After having found a quiet place, he sat down and closed his eyes again. The scene had attracted the attention of many people on the ground. Most people put aside their contempt, including some of the inner disciples who were stepping into the nature level. Seriousness gleamed in their eyes. All cultivators liked to put themselves in a hypothetically dangerous situation. They wondered if they could have avoided Zen's flying knife had they been in the strong man's position. Most people already knew that they couldn't. Zen's reaction was too quick, and his knife was too sudden. Of course, Zen had better things to do than try to figure out why these disciples were staring at him and what they were thinking about. As he meditated, Zen heard a trembling sound in the air. When he looked up, he saw a monolith descending from the sky. It was a giant flying chariot. Chapter 47. A sudden attack in the skies. Flying chariots were uncommon in the Empire because they cost as much as a top-grade mysterious weapon. Another reason they were rarely seen was that a top-grade mysterious weapon could enhance a refiner's strength while a flying chariot was only a means of transport. As such, none of the households in the sea county where the Luo family was from would spend that sort of money on a flying chariot. Only places with wealth, like the imperial capital, were flying chariots commonplace. As the enormous chariot hovered, slowly descending from the air, Zen stood awestruck at the sight. This was the first chariot of this size he ever saw. Other disciples that were waiting were used to seeing them and stood up when they saw the huge chariot approaching. It was time for them to set out. The enormous flying chariot docked next to the blue sky parking ground, and a pontoon bridge extended from its side to the edge of the ground. A few people were disembarking from the flying chariot waiting near the pontoon bridge. The disciples of the Cloud sect waiting on the ground handed their tokens to the checkers. After tickets were checked, the disciples strode across the bridge and climbed aboard the flying chariot. Zen followed the crowd. When he walked up to the checkers, he presented his token. The checkers appeared surprised when they read Zen was just at the marrow refining level, but they didn't make any comments. After examining the token, they motioned Zen to board the flying chariot. After that, Zen crossed the pontoon bridge and boarded the flying chariot. Inside, the chariot was spacious, with rows of seats along the walls that were fixed to the floor. Zen found a place in a corner and sat down. Underfoot, a tremor was felt by the passengers as the massive chariot lifted off. Passengers sitting in window seats could see all of the Cloud sect as they rose in the air. Mountains rose up, meeting the skyline and extending endlessly in a continuous line. The Cloud sect made up a quarter of the imperial capital, but adding the mountain range that lay behind the Cloud sect made it larger than the whole imperial capital. Just then, Zen saw a black mountain. At the Cloud sect, most of the mountains were green with thick foliage, which made the black one stand out from the rest. Hell Mountain, Zen whispered in his mind. Sean had described Hell Mountain as being completely black with constant gray smoke rising, and a sulfurous smell that appeared from a distance. Somewhere, within that mountain range was Yan, his younger sister. Zen stared at the mountain out the window for as far as his eye could see, eager to see everything there. Soon, he smiled bitterly. Have I gone mad? I may be at the marrow refining level, and, true, my hearing and eyesight have improved, but, how could I possibly think I could see things in that mountain from up here? Thought Zen, in a sad, mocking manner. Besides which, finding Yan in a place that size is an insane dream. Zen admitted to himself, and yet, His gaze remained fixated on Hell Mountain until the chariot turned and the mountain disappeared. The speed that the chariot flew was so fast that it only took 6 hours to reach the southern part of the imperial capital from the Cloud sect. Many of the refiners were whispering amongst themselves while others prepared to disembark. It seemed that their destination was just around the corner. Just as they were preparing to land, something unexpected happened. Crash! Glass shattering suddenly ripped through the cabin as a glazed window on the right side burst and 2 green blades came sailing through what remained of the window. The blades were crisscrossing like scissors and sliced smoothly through the neck of the passenger sitting by the window. Just before the head fell, a monstrous creature poked its face in through what was left of the window. Its large, bulbous compound eyes looked around seconds before it snapped the man's head with its mandible and disappeared again through the window. Blood spurted up from the man's neck with such force it splattered across the chariot's ceiling. Passengers sat frozen, dumbfounded at what happened. Within seconds someone screeched, "On your guard! Blade locusts attack!" Yet, everyone sat still. They were all battle-hardened and level-headed enough to take on fighting insect aggression. A momentary panic ensued before cooler heads prevailed and everyone moved to the middle of the chariot quickly. "Was that a blade locust?" asked Zen. He had seen it clearly. It was emerald green, with compound eyes that took up most of its head, and was the size of an adult man. With wings protruding from its back, the insect had 6 appendages, and the 2 uppermost looked like long flat blades and were extremely sharp. This beast was brutal and hideous. Zen had just gotten out of his seat when the window next to him shattered, and a blade locust came through right at him. A pair of green blades flew through the open window towards Zen's waist, slicing from either side at breakneck speed. This being Zen's first encounter with the evil beast, he was nervous. But, instead of flinching, he threw a powerful punch aimed at the beast's abdomen. However, the exoskeleton covering its abdomen was thick. Zen thought he could crack the exoskeleton with a single blow, but it was too thick. Dang! His attack failed, giving the giant insect an opening to strike back swinging its 2 blade-like forelimbs. Swoosh! The sound came from behind Zen as a sword sliced through the air, black-red light shimmering from it as it cleaved the blade locust's head open. Despite the sword split its head open, the beast wielded its blades in a frenzy-driven assault. Thankfully, the man-sized insect was swinging blindly and had lost both its speed and strength, giving Zen a chance to duck to safety. "Thanks for saving me, man," Zen said to the disciple in a black robe as he found a safer spot in the corner. The disciple looked young and wore his hair long. The black-red energy on his sword wasn't constructed by using life energy but was made up of genuine life vitality. Given those facts, this young man was at the nature level. "No worries, it was nothing. Besides, we're both disciples from the Cloud sect," offered the young man lightly. "By the way, blade locusts have exceedingly tough abdomens. Their heads are the weak spots. Don't let them get a strike in or surround you unless you are as strong as iron," he added kindly. Zen nodded, indicating that he got it. The young man, cold as he seemed, had not only saved him but had given him vital details about the insect's weaknesses. It was very rare to meet such a good person from the Cloud sect. Blade locusts began continually hurtling themselves at the flying chariot. The battle was on. No one expected the beasts to dive onto the flying chariot as they soared on their way to the destination. Amid the struggle, an alarmed voice shouted, "Blade locusts are tearing through the bottom of the chariot." The flying chariot housed its power in the bottom, so if the base was demolished, the chariot would plummet to the ground below. It was unfortunate that no one present was able to fly like their attackers, leaving them no recourse except to watch as their fate was ripped away piece by piece like the hull of their chariot. It wasn't long before everyone felt the floor tilt, and sure enough, the huge flying chariot began to fall. Zen slid along the floor, smacking into a corner before grasping a beam to steady himself. The current situation, with the insects, sudden attack and cunning maneuver to rip through the bottom of the vehicle, was wholly unexpected. "What lousy luck," determined Zen, laughing silently at the irony, with a wry smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He had assumed they'd arrive at their destination and take a break to acclimate before hunting blade locusts. The good news was that the bottom of the chariot was only half torn, which meant they still had some power. So, the chariot merely tilted downward, falling slowly. Everyone clutched any secure objects around them to keep steady as they waited for the impact of the crash. Crrrssh. A deafening, hollow sound of the chariot slamming into the ground reverberated through the passengers. The center keel snapped off, causing the chariot to separate, splintering into many pieces. The land was littered with sections of broken wood that moments ago was a mighty chariot. The impact didn't hurt Zen, who suffered only momentary confusion. Climbing out of the wreckage, he found himself in a war-torn battle between inner disciples and blade locusts. Many of the disciples present were at the nature level. Aside from Zen, most of others were dominant refiners half-step into the nature level. In the face of the crisis, everyone remained level-headed, immediately launching counterattacks against the blade locusts. For a time, lights of the life energy and the life vitality flashed, one after another on the battlefield. It was an intense battle. Only then did Zen understand the full impact of what the insect aggression was. Whether in an open field, in the jungle or high above in the sky, everywhere he looked was green. When the insects flew, people couldn't see the blue sky anymore. As soon as Zen was away from the wreck, he was set on by 4 blade locusts swooping down on him from 3 directions. As he learned from the young man with a ponytail, Zen knew the blade locust's most reliable defense was its abdomen, and the exoskeleton grown on its body was even more robust than man-made armor. The earlier attack in the chariot was a good lesson for Zen, and he wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Beset on by blade locusts, Zen took the offense. He fended off oncoming blades, concentrating his strength on his arm, and smashing the head with a single blow. After that, he grabbed the body and threw it behind him, blocking the 2 blade locusts that were rushing at him from behind. These beasts outnumbered the refiners, and being surrounded like this was quite intimidating. So, Zen heeded the earlier advice and tried not to get entrapped by a swarm of blade locusts. Of the 4 blade locusts that attacked, he killed one with his fist and blocked 2 more behind him, which left just 1. It would be easier to deal with the left one. Before it could strike with its blades, Zen reached out fast to its abdominal joints. With one firm yank, he ripped the 2 blades off. In fact, Zen thought a single blade locust wasn't that difficult to deal with. Disciples that were half-step into the nature level were able to kill a single blade locust with ease, as well as those at the marrow refining level. Actually, even at the organ refining level, one might be able to defeat a locust, if they put all their strength into their actions. Chapter 48. Rescued. According to the records of beasts rankings in the eastern region, the ordinary blade locusts were considered level 3 monsters. However, the difference between other beasts that were level 3 and the blade locusts was that blade locusts never appeared alone. If you come across a single blade locust, there are at least 2,000 more behind that one. Although it was an exaggeration, it showed just how vast the numbers were, and so the saying spread throughout the south. In the face of such vast numbers of blade locusts, refiners were afraid to deal with them, whether we're half a step into the nature level or at nature level. At present, disciples from the Cloud sect had managed to kill a few hundred blade locusts, because each one had good strength. Blade locust corpses were piled high around the wreckage, accumulating a body hill. No matter how high the pile of dead blade locusts got, it seemed endless amounts were coming at the disciples. Ah! Came a sudden scream. It was a disciple rushing the blade locusts in a drastic move. Even if the others wanted to save him, it was too late. In an instant, a large group of locusts knocked him to the ground and were gnawing his limbs, until nothing remained and the blade locusts scattered. As the other disciples watched this gnarly scene, a shiver went through each of them. No one wanted to be the next to be ripped apart and eaten alive by these gruesome monsters. Wave on wave of blade locusts came at them though, and once everyone's energy was sapped, they would die. As the onslaught continued, the disciples felt their melancholy attitudes deepening within, and their attacks became weaker. It was now that one of the disciples shouted, "Cheer up! No slacking now, it's not that bad. We should counterattack. If we roll over and let them break us, we'll all die right here." Zing! A purple energy arrow of life vitality was let loose, whizzing into the mass of blade locusts, and instantly thrusting through more than 10. Bam! Blazing flames exploded, coloring a patch of sky red. The powerful fire incinerated dozens of blade locusts, leaving the charred stench death in the air. It was the nature-level refiners using their unique skills to fight. The others in their ranks were significantly encouraged by this display of force, and were reinvigorated, beginning to battle with all their strength. Rushing in and out among the horde of locusts, Zen used his power of purple light fist. It was not all that powerful, yet, through the advantage of his body's strength, he killed 8 blade locusts in a short time. In the heat of the battle, there was a scream, "Alert, everyone! Incoming, blade locust officers!" Zen looked up, along with all the others fighting for their lives. The sight of dozens of purple blade locusts among legions of green ordinary blade locusts was approaching them. The purple officers were almost twice the size of the ordinary ones. They appeared hideous and misshapen, and covering the skin on their bodies were dense bony thorns. Are these purple monstrosities the blade locust officers? Wondered Zen. It was said a blade locust officer was far more potent than an ordinary blade locust, and here a few hundred were headed at them. The ordinary blade locusts were challenging enough to kill, let alone the stronger blade locust officers. The screeching blade locust officers dove from high above in the sky, while more blade locusts surrounded the disciples. Everyone felt an overwhelming feeling of gloom within, pondering, are we going to die here today? Who could have foreseen this outcome while boarding the giant flying chariot? In fact, while blade locust hunting was difficult, situations as dangerous like this rarely happened. From the jungle near them, a branch of burning bamboo came flying in at that moment, with a whoosh. Thick smoke billowed from the end of the bamboo impaled in the ground. A strong scent of herb came from the smoke filling the air. Sniffing, Zen breathed it in. Suddenly, more burning bamboos flew into the midst of the crowd. Every bamboo was billowing with smoke from one end. Soon, the air was filled with smoke. Amazingly, the blade locusts feared the smoke and spread their wings, taking off into the skies above at sight of the burning bamboos. Circling the disciples below, the locusts remained above, not daring to descend on them. The same thing happened with the blade locust officers. Although the smoke was making the disciples uncomfortable, they were able to bear it and were given a reprieve from the locust attacks. A swishing sound was heard coming from the woods before a large number of serious-looking men appeared at the edge of trees, all dressed in uniforms, marching in unison, and each carrying bamboo sticks on their backs. "It's the Imperial Army," whispered more than one of the disciples at the sight of the Imperial Army. The Cloud Sect disciples visibly relaxed. The Burning Sky Empire would send a considerable number of the Imperial Army yearly to war the insect aggression. Compared with the Cloud Sect disciples, the Imperial Army had unified action and a good sense of discipline. While the individual strength of an Imperial soldier might not be comparable to a single Cloud Sect disciple, the unified power of the Imperial Army shouldn't be underestimated. The Imperial Army formed orderly rows, and then a young man with a crew cut stepped forward and spoke earnestly, "I am Martin Liu, the Centurion of the Green Haze Group. Disciples of the Cloud Sect, listen carefully. If you want to live, follow us." After Martin Liu issued his commands, the Cloud Sect disciples stood there, staring at blade locust corpses piled high. They came here to earn points, not for a holiday. By the rules set forth for the Cloud Sect disciples, they received 1 point for 20 blade locusts. Such a pile of blade locust corpses was a vast number of points in the disciples' eyes. However, the bodies of blade locust were too big to drag, so the Cloud Sect stipulated that it was necessary to dig the crystal core from the chest of blade locust. Since everyone had fought hard for such a long time, they were eager to get some booty. But Martin was pushing them to leave. Of course, all of the disciples were upset. The fact that the relationship between the Imperial Army and the Cloud Sect wasn't a harmonious one didn't help. They didn't like each other, and incidents of group brawls erupted at times for no reason. Someone said to Martin, "Can you wait for just a little while? We need to." Martin interrupted, "HMMPH. I know what you want to do, but you'd better think it over prudently. We've detected legions of blade locusts swarming here, and our lives are worth more than yours. You don't have to go if you don't want to. But we are leaving." Feeling they had no choice, the Cloud Sect disciples prepared to set out with the troops. They had to follow the Imperial Army. With so many blade locusts' corpses, several cultivators of the nature level decided to stay and collect some crystal cores. They thought they'd be able to break through the encirclement alone, but, looking up they saw the increasing amounts of blade locusts, and finally, gave up the idea. The average strength of a single soldier in the Imperial Army was weaker than an individual disciple of the Cloud Sect, but they had a few tricks coping with the large numbers of blade locusts. For example, the bamboos they carried were designed in particular for fending off the blade locust attacks. Trudging ahead, they lit a stick of bamboo every 10 feet or so. As long as the bamboo released a cloud of smoke, the blade locusts were held off, hovering out of reach above their heads. The Imperial Army silently marched, leading the way, while the disciples of Cloud Sect plodding along behind, had to counterattack blade locusts from time to time, with either swords or bows. However, overall the blade locusts almost all kept their distance and were difficult to hit, so whenever a disciple hit one or two blade locust, they would laugh elatedly. Watching the scene, Zen just shook his head. The strength of a single cloud sect disciple was greater than an individual soldier of the imperial army. Still, if they were to fight against each other, the cloud sect disciples might very well be defeated. The cloud sect disciples didn't have the training that the military had, so they didn't acquire the benefits of teamwork. Half an hour later, they had trekked through the jungle. Under the leadership of the imperial army, they had crossed a small river and hiked to the top of a hill, where a magnificent castle came into view. "It's the Dragon Fort. We are safe here," shouted a few sharp-eyed inner disciples when they spotted the castle. It was the Dragon Fort, their destination, and was used to defend the southern frontier of the Burning Sky Empire. The Dragon Fort was deemed the most critical barrier in the southern part of the Burning Sky Empire, and beyond it was the endless tropical rainforest. Zen had once read the book, Exotic Beasts Annals, which recorded the areas of adventuring throughout the eastern region. In the book, it recorded a story of cultivators from the eastern region going deep into the rainforest. 100 miles deep in the lush rainforest, they had only found level 3 beasts, and it was reasonably safe. Another 500 miles further into the forest though one would encounter creatures that were level 5. Over 1,000 miles deep into the rainforest, all kinds of level 7 or 8 senior beasts could be found. Further within the rainforest was a world too difficult for humans to explore. Every year, tons of beasts emerged from the rainforest to attack the Burning Sky Empire for unknown reasons. It was the Dragon Fort's role to keep these beasts from the rainforest at bay. Among the various beasts, the most troublesome was the blade locust. The Dragon Fort was rudimentary in appearance, boasting no ornament for either the walls or the moat except for one huge sculpted dragon head hanging on the wall. The sculpture was entirely black, and the dragon's eyes sparkled when they caught the light. The sculpture radiated incomparable majesty. While passing under the dragon head sculpture, each disciple of the Cloud sect felt a sense of awe. When Zen walked closer, he stood, staring up at the dragon's eyes for a while with a hint of doubt rising in his heart. Zen could feel the intention from within dragon head sculpture, the spiritual pressure it was emitting. Chapter 49, An Unexpected Challenge. Zen, who had experienced the state of forgetting himself through soul refining, could sense the intent of the dragon head. What confused Zen was why a dragon head carved out of rock by craftsmen would emanate intent. Since Zen could not figure out this mystery, he decided to drop it and follow the other disciples into the Dragon Fort. As he entered, Zen could hear the cracking sound released by kerosene-filled torches. The torches shed light and created shadows, adding to the mystery of the fort. Martin directed the followers toward a building before telling them, "You can rest in this building for now. You are requested to follow the rules of Dragon Fort. Whoever wants to hunt the blade locusts with the Imperial Army should wait for assignments. Meanwhile, anyone who wants to face the insects alone can leave at any time." Martin's proclamation prompted a mixed response from the disciples of Cloud sect. 4 disciples stepped forward and saluted to Martin before the leader spoke. "Martin, it is very kind of you to rescue us today, but we have decided to operate at our will." Martin waved his hand and replied, "Suit yourself." The 4 bid farewell to their fellow disciples and took their leave. After their departure, the remaining Cloud sect disciples began talking among themselves. Slowly, each group decided to follow the example of the 4 that left first. Finally, only 4 disciples remained, including Zen. This was Zen's first experience with participating in an insect aggression. He saw no harm in joining the Imperial Army as he was currently non-allied. The other 3 disciples that had chosen to stay back also had their reasons for hunting the blade locusts with the Imperial Army. Zen recognized one disciple to be the youth with a ponytail who saved him in the gigantic flying chariot. Now that a few disciples had decided to work with the Imperial Army, Martin smiled and nodded to them before dismissing his soldiers. He turned and instructed the soldiers, "Today's task has been completed, you may enjoy your free time." After the dismissal, Martin guided the 4 disciples into the building. The gray-painted building was virtually a tavern. Zen was greeted by a strong scent that seemed to be a mix of sweat and smoke upon entering the tavern. All 4 disciples were overwhelmed by the smell. Martin had expected their antipathy and smiled as he explained, "I hope you will understand the living environment of the Imperial Army stationed at Dragon Fort. It is inferior to the environment to which you are accustomed at the Cloud sect. The Imperial Army stationed here fought beasts all day. We are supposed to observe customs and be mentally prepared for harsh environments." The young man with the ponytail smiled as he replied. "A good attitude, indeed. Martin had a table brought in and shouted to the barkeeper to serve an aging. The aging was a jar of wine. It must have been old as the jar was covered with dust. The barkeeper opened the cap and poured the liquid without removing the dust. The aging, though poor in appearance, was aromatic and fresh. The 4 disciples drank at will. Martin wolfed down his cup before asking their names. The 4 disciples smiled before sharing their names with Martin. Zhen Luo, Sun Zhao, Tank Yong, Roger Meng. Now that the introductions had been done, Zhen finally learned the name of the youth with the ponytail. His name was Roger Meng. Martin committed the 4 names to memory and lifted his cup to express his appreciation for their alliance with the Green Haze group. Martin, there is no need for such formalities. We are joining you in the hunt for blade locusts. Zhen drained his cup before continuing. I expect a greater likelihood of victory through this alliance. I cannot figure out why the other Cloud sect disciples are unwilling to stay. The Imperial Army has developed an esoterica to hunt down blade locusts, but the most of Cloud sect disciples are hesitant to ally with them. Is there a reason behind their decision? Zhen wondered. Somewhat challenged by Zhen's question, Martin managed to say, Zhen, since this is your first time at the Dragon Fort, you are naturally unfamiliar with the rules. As Zhen nodded and admitted his unfamiliarity, Roger added to Martin's explanation, when the disciples form a group of 4 or 5 people, they cooperate well and coordinate when hunting blade locusts. Their success leads to handsome rewards. However, cooperating with the Imperial Army would mean fewer opportunities to maneuver. There will also be a division of crystal cores collected from blade locusts. Disciples, therefore, prefer to complete missions separately. Roger's elaborate explanation enlightened Zhen. Most Cloud sect disciples work separate from the Imperial Army to ensure high efficiency in performing tasks. Roger chose to exclude one reason from his explanation. Most Cloud sect disciples at the nature level naturally felt themselves superior to the soldiers in the Imperial Army. Martin, a centurion, was half-step into the nature level, but his subordinates were at the bone, organ, and marrow refining levels respectively. Meanwhile, the Imperial Army cast a slur on Cloud sect disciples for their lack of military-like discipline and excessive willful arrogance. However, some leaders in the Imperial Army were willing to seek short-term assistance and support from Cloud sect disciples with superior martial arts, which was why Martin invited the 4 to drink together. Roger, I take the liberty to ask about your reason for allying with the Green Haze group. Zhen could not figure out why Roger had chosen to stay. As for him, he stayed because of his unfamiliarity with the Dragon Fort and the situations here. Roger shrugged his shoulders and smiled as he replied, I came here to enrich my vision, mindless of crystal cores and points. Just as Zhen was about to ask Roger to elaborate, a voice from a neighboring table caught his attention. I have expected great powers from every Cloud sect disciple. And now I see the falsity of all that I have been told at the sight of a nobody. A man challenged truculently. The 5 turned and saw a man with a beard who seemed pleased with himself. All 5 were aware that the man was referring to Zhen when he said, nobody. Roger was at the nature level, and Sun and Tank were half-step into the nature level while Zhen was still at the marrow refining level. Wu, stop your drunk roaring. You are only going to stir up trouble. Martin dismissed the troublemaker nonchalantly before turning to Zhen and asking him to ignore the outburst. Zhen nodded and stayed calm. He didn't mind being underestimated. But the bearded man, heedless of Martin's advice, rose from his seat, strode toward Zhen, and continued challenging, Martin, I am telling the truth. The Cloud sect, also known as the Top sect, is losing its influence and power. It is ridiculous for the organization to give such an important assignment to a nobody. At this statement, the tavern became alive with gossip and chit-chats. The Imperial Army's soldiers seemed to think of the troublemaking as amusement. Most of them had developed a dislike toward the disciples of Cloud sect. The bearded man was purposely challenging Zhen to please them. Martin, sensing the growing tension and hostility, tried to discredit the troublemaker and placated Zhen by saying, Zhen, do not take it to heart. Wu's roaring is due to his previous conflict with some disciple of Cloud sect. How could any disciple of Cloud sect provoke me beyond measure? Martin, no more your intermediation. The troublemaker dismissed Martin's reconciliation and pressed his advantage. Bloke, why not come to blows with me to display your martial art? Zhen remained unperturbed at the blatant challenge. His purpose for coming to this part of the empire was to hunt blade locusts to gain points and experience in his quest for immortality. He ignored the challenge as it didn't suit his purpose. Meanwhile, Roger also made light of the instigation. But Sun and Tank could not contain their anger anymore. I am willing to show you my martial art level to uphold the reputation of Cloud Sect. Sun braced for the challenge. How could you, a soldier, half-step into the nature level challenge Zen, who is at the marrow refining level like this? Tank said sardonically. Although Tank's reference to Zen's inferior martial art level was intended to speak in favor of Zen, he unexpectedly hurt Zen's feelings. Zen could ignore the challenge and show his strength in the presence of his fellow disciples. After the comment, he rose, stood in front of Tank and Sun, and then said, "Tank and Sun, please let me fend for myself." Chapter 50. Disgraced himself. But that guy is half-step into the nature level. You will be in an unfavorable position, said Tank Yong anxiously. Sun Jiao nodded in agreement and said, "Yes, Tank is right. Zen, this fight will be unfair for you." Martin wanted to stop Zen as soon as he heard what they had said. He knew of Wu's strength. Wu was one of the best among the soldiers who were half-step into the nature level. Zen would be at a disadvantage if he fought with him. But before Martin could stand up, Roger put a hand on his shoulder, shook his head in disapproval, and said, "Let Zen make the choice. We have to believe in his abilities. After all, he joined the Imperial Army to fight the Blade Locusts with the soldiers. He needs to prove his worth to them." But, Martin thought over what Roger had said. However, he remained unconvinced. He wanted to say more, but before he could, Roger interrupted him again. Roger murmured, "I think Zen is extraordinary even though he is at the marrow refining level." After all, Roger Meng was one of top disciples in the nature level, and so his foresight naturally differed from others. Once Roger showed confidence in Zen's abilities, Martin had no reason to try and dissuade Zen. Although he decided to keep quiet, his hesitance was reflected in his expression. Wu didn't care as much about Zen's reputation. Haha, in spite of his inferior strength, this guy is brave enough to accept my challenge. Buddies, come here, let's move these tables and chairs so that some space can be made for the fight. Wu yelled. The sounds of shuffling feet and scraping chairs filled the tavern as the other soldiers positioned themselves so that they could watch the fight. Tavern brawls were common between soldiers at Dragon Fort. The waiters who had been watching the argument hurriedly moved the tables and chairs away. At last, a large space was cleared. Wu stood in the center of the space. A grin spread on his lips as he gestured at Zen before saying, "Brat, come here." Zen nodded. The gentle look in his eyes transformed into a keenness, as though he was able to see everyone's true nature despite their pretenses. With each step Zen took, his demeanor changed. His soul was far more powerful than an ordinary person's. Hence, Zen naturally looked mighty. He became mightier every step he moved forward. After taking 7 steps forward, Zen seemed to have turned into another person. He looked like a domineering devil with terrifying strength who had just finished his refinement in the purgatory. By now, Zen's soul still didn't have intent. If he had, it would have been possible for Zen to hurt the bystanders by the strength from his soul alone. As soon as the bystanders felt Zen's power, surprise and shock were reflected on their faces. Even Roger was astounded. When Roger saw how skillfully and proficiently Zen had fought with the strong man Gordon at the Blue Sky parking ground, he concluded that Zen was more powerful than he appeared. But now Roger, who was very skilled at the nature level, was also scared by Zen's mighty strength. This guy is only at the marrow refining level, but he is more than what he seems. How many skills is he concealing? Thought Roger. At that moment, Wu felt foolish. The domineering strength sensed by others was only a portion of the strength exuded from Zen's body. When this force radiated by Zen attacked him, Wu felt as if he had gotten stuck in mire. Even the air around him seemed to have stagnated. Wu moaned and groaned as he felt the pressure of Zen's domineering strength. He already knew that Cloud Sect disciples were not weak. But Zen had just reached the marrow refining level. He couldn't believe that a person at the marrow refining level could be so powerful. Has he cultivated some skills to enhance his strength? Or perhaps his actual strength is very mediocre and not so domineering as it appears? As this thought came to his mind, Wu gritted his teeth and decided to use his greatest advantage, power, against Zen. A person's power was associated with his level regardless of the skills he was cultivating. The higher a person's level, the fewer the impurities inside his body, and thus, the greater the person's power. It was beyond doubt that Wu's power was greater than Zen's since Wu was a half-step into the nature level while Zen was still at the marrow refining level. Moreover, the giant ape iron fist that Wu had been cultivating could double his power. At the same level, very few people were more powerful than Wu. Thinking of all this, Wu felt more confident. He mobilized all his power and fiercely swung his fist at Zen. Puff! A muffled noise was heard. Despite the strength used by Wu, Zen used only his palm to defend himself. He caught Wu's fist midair and held it tightly in his hand. At first, Wu was astonished by the block. When he regained his composure, Wu tried to direct his strength to his arm. He wanted to see if he could shake Zen's hold on his fist. But Zen remained undaunted. He stood calmly with Wu's fist secured firmly in his. Wu tried hard to push his fist forward, but he couldn't budge Zen's hold. Then, he attempted to pull his fist out of Zen's hand but failed at that as well. Drops of sweat collected on Wu's forehead. He had exerted himself so much that his face and neck had turned dark red. In the current situation, Wu found himself in a dilemma. He could neither advance nor retreat. A weaker cultivator had just defeated him. All the bystanders inside the tavern were taken aback when they saw this incredible scene. Since they were his battle companions, they knew of Wu's strength. They hadn't expected that Zen, who was only at the marrow refining level, would be able to grab Wu's fist with a single hand. This was not an ordinary feat. Even Martin, who had reached the nature level, couldn't do that. This indicated that Zen was more powerful than Wu. What others didn't know was that Zen had woken up 4 dragon scales, and was hence almost as powerful as a strong man at the nature level. Seeing that Wu couldn't shake off his grip, Zen took a deep breath. Soon afterward, he swung his arm and pushed Wu back. Wu's eyes widened with surprise and fear when he felt Zen's power flowing through his arms. Before he could process what had happened, Wu found himself flying backward. He crashed through several rows of tables and chairs before colliding with a wooden cabinet. All the furniture Wu had been hurled through now lay on the floor in a pile of shattered wood. At last, Wu collided with the wall before falling to the floor in a motionless heap. At this display of power, silence descended in the tavern. Fights between the Imperial Army and Cloud Sect were very common. Although disciples of Cloud Sect were highly skilled, soldiers of the Imperial Army were strongmen who had experienced combats extensively. They had acquired valuable practical skills from fighting. This gave them a slight advantage and brought them at par with the Cloud Sect disciples. However, a soldier had now been humiliated by a young cultivator at the marrow refining level. All the soldiers felt ashamed. Under normal circumstances, the entire tavern would have been involved in a skirmish like this. But, today, everyone knew that Wu had deliberately provoked Zen. What made them more hesitant to get involved was that Wu had instigated a junior disciple at the marrow refining level to fight him. Although the soldiers in the Imperial Army were not physically well-groomed, they were sensible. Today, Wu was totally out of luck as he had disgraced himself. He shouldn't blame Zen who was at the marrow refining level. At that moment, even Martin felt a little embarrassed. Zen had joined the Green Haze group at Martin's invitation. Martin was now in a quandary. On one hand, it would be rude for him to embarrass Zen because Wu had chosen to incite the young disciple in a show of strength. On the other hand, Zen's strength had been astounding. As a result, he humiliated Wu completely. Seeing that Wu was still lying motionless on the floor, Martin resented him a little. After all, both he and Wu were members of the Imperial Army. Thus, Martin felt that he had been humiliated by association. Wu overestimated his abilities after drinking some wine. Cloud Sect is a sacred place of martial arts. Its students are talented in different skills. Since Wu chose to disgrace himself, he deserves the insult, thought Martin. In this situation, Martin's only choice was to smooth things over, and to this end, he said, "Well, the fight is over. Tomorrow, we have work to do. I think it's best if we rest early." While the explanation was feeble, it gave the soldiers, including Wu, a reason to excuse themselves from the tavern without further embarrassment or confrontations. On hearing Martin's words, Wu got up from the floor. He shook his hands and legs. Judging from his rosy complexion, the onlookers concluded that he hadn't been hurt. Though no one voiced their concerns, the soldiers knew that Zen had perhaps restrained himself from using his full power. Had he not done so, Wu would have been severely wounded. Wu was a soldier. He was frank and upright, albeit not amenable to reason. Even though a weaker opponent had beaten him, he would behave fairly. At last, he walked to Zen, cupped one hand in the other before his chest and said, "You are a disciple from Cloud Sect. You have potent strength and abilities. I am really astonished by you. What happened today was my fault." After saying this, he looked around and said, "I have embarrassed myself. I apologize." As soon as he had finished, Wu looked up and left. Martin didn't explain to others like Zen and Roger why Wu showed hatred for Cloud Sect's disciples until Wu had left the tavern. Previously, Wu had led his Evergreen squad to fulfill tasks, and some members of the squad were disciples of Cloud Sect. In executing their tasks, the squad was besieged by Blade Locusts. While the Cloud Sect disciples were able to escape from the Blade Locust siege because of their skills, they left soldiers from the Evergreen squad behind. Although the squad persevered and eventually escaped, scores of soldiers had lost their lives. All these soldiers had risked their lives under Wu's command. Had the Cloud Sect disciples not deserted the Evergreen squad, they wouldn't have lost so many soldiers. He must have felt great pain to see his soldiers who had risked their lives with him being killed by the Blade Locusts in front of him, Martin said while shaking his head with a heavy sigh. Zen nodded sympathetically and said, I can understand. Wu is righteous, and he is not a bad man. It's great that you can understand him, Zen. As Martin spoke up, he burst into laughter, and continued, it's too late in the evening. At present, insect epidemics occur here and there. There must be some tasks for us to fulfill tomorrow. Let me arrange accommodation for the four of you to rest. A little while later, all the soldiers and Cloud Sect disciples settled in their rooms. That night, another huge flying chariot landed in Dragon Fort. After the door of the huge flying chariot opened, Cloud Sect disciples alighted. Liam Sao was the last to step out. Behind him stood two slender and tall young men. Both young men looked pale. Since one man was light-complexioned, he looked ghostly white, while the other, a black-skinned man, appeared as though a layer of ash covered his skin. As they neither said much nor looked at the bystanders, it appeared as though the young men were introverted. However, they looked fierce, which showed that they were cultivators at the nature level. Hey, buddies, we have arrived. Liam said politely. Dang it, we traveled so far for a guy at the marrow refining level, complained the white-skinned young man unpleasantly. Liam replied with a smile, we can surely gain some benefits when we get this done for Fren. Dealing with that guy is a piece of cake for us. Let's just think of this as a fun trip. Hearing this, the black-skinned young man snorted and said, don't talk nonsense. Do you think I would have come to the Dragon Fort with White Fiend, had Fren not asked us for a favor? Are you sure that the guy Zen is at the Dragon Fort? Liam nodded and replied, yes, I am very certain about this. If so, ask him to come out so that I can kill him with a slap and fulfill Fren's task. Am I right? After that, we can go right back on the flying chariot, both young men said simultaneously. Liam closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose as his head throbbed. He recalled that the white-skinned man was called White Fiend, and the black-skinned one was Black Fiend. The two formed a group known as Black Fiend and White Fiend. Although the two young men were very powerful, they were also unruly and grumpy. They would beat and kill people on impulse as long as they were enraged. Recalling Fren's promise, Liam tried hard to suppress his anger upon hearing what White Fiend and Black Fiend had said. He patiently explained, Dragon Fort is under the control of the Imperial Army. Do you think you will survive after you kill a person here on a whim? Then, what should we do? Do we really have to kill that guy after he leaves here? White Fiend asked with a gloomy face. Since he was willing to come to Dragon Fort, he will eventually get out here to hunt and kill Blade Locusts. When that happens, you will have many chances to kill him. If we plan it well, we might think of many funny and entertaining ways to kill him. Who knows, we might not even have to get involved directly. As Liam said this, a cunning smile grew on his face. Chapter 51, Gains in Crises. Boom, 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 boom. Loud sounds of drums from outside woke Zen up in the early hours of the morning. As soon as he opened his door, he was infected by the atmosphere. Amidst the bustle of the drumming, 100 Imperial soldiers were marching out of the fort in groups. Martin located Zen, assembled the team, and they took up the task of hunting Blade Locusts beyond the confines of the fort. Hundreds of miles in front of Dragon Fort was the principal battlefield against Blade Locusts. Dead Blade Locusts were piled up in heaps on both sides of the path. Zen saw some people crowding around the heaps as if they were searching for something. Occasionally one of them would prod at a corpse. He noticed that all those scavenging the bodies were ordinary citizens. None of them were body refiners. So why are they out there? He wondered. Common people were so weak that a single Blade Locust could easily kill them all. The battlefield was too dangerous for them. After watching the people rifling through the remains, Zen asked, why are these civilians risking their lives outside the fort? Aren't they afraid to die? Martin laughed at his question. Afraid to die? Of course, they are afraid to die. Every year many civilians get themselves killed here. Just a few days ago, some blade locusts got lucky. They rushed in, killing a dozen civilians. Then why did they come out of the fort? Asked Zen, puzzled. Martin smiled. It has to do with your sect. Zen was still confused. So, Roger explained, each blade locust has a crystal core in its chest. In our sect, they only need the crystal cores you have collected to count the number of blade locusts you have killed. Usually, we take the crystal cores after we kill them. But, we always miss some amidst the many carcasses. These people are here to take a chance on luck. Crystal cores are sold at a premium in the fort. That explanation cleared it up for Zen. 20 crystal cores were worth 1 point. 1 point was worth 2 cubic crystals. Refiners would love to buy some crystal cores with gold or silver that they had no use for. At the same time, through trade, ordinary individuals could make a fortune, living a prosperous, comfortable life. It was a small wonder why so many men were willing to risk their lives looking for crystal cores outside of the fort. Ahead, the lush green rain forest was quiet. In the face of the insect army, other beasts migrated yearly because they were as defenseless as humans when it came to the insect horde. The creatures either went into hiding deep underground or fled the forest entirely. All was still. The only sound was the leaves rustling in the wind. Moving silently, Zen and the others made their way into the forest. Since a blade locust's entire body was grass-green hues, they blended in with the environment perfectly, making them good at camouflaging themselves in the forest. When prey was close enough, they would leap out and make the kill. The instant Zen brushed by a shrub, there were 2 blades shooting out at his neck so fast that the blades whistled as they neared him. Smirking, Zen seized a blade with his bare hand as it came close. Energy erupted through his body, covering every inch of him with a purple aura. With a clang, the blade snapped between his fingers. At the same time, he shattered the head of the blade locust with his other fist. Everyone was on guard after the appearance of this blade locust. Zen killed it quickly, but that didn't relieve the tension. Instead, the saying, when you have 1 blade locust in sight, 2,000 more are close, went through their minds. The rustling grew louder and louder. It seemed suddenly that the entire forest was alive with thousands of blade locusts appearing out of thin air and closing in on all sides. Killing them was the only thought running through Zen's head at that moment. To him, the blade locusts were nothing more than points and a ticket to get into Hell Mountain. Since Zen began the marrow refining level, he had better control of his life energy. He couldn't use it to attack like a weapon or transform it into life vitality like people at the nature level yet though. Still, at this level, he was able to control his life energy perfectly. Purple light scattered through the air like thin lines extending from Zen's body, and the next moment his fist landed forcibly on a blade locust's head. Die! 2 blade locusts sprang out on either side of him, their sharp blades rising, snapping at the air as they closed in on him. Zen didn't flinch or dodge. His fist severed the air. The blow summoned a horrifying force, the purple light fist. Thump, clunk. With dull thuds, the abdomens of both blade locusts were crushed into pieces under his fists. Their crystal cores dropped to the dirt. Before he could pick the crystal cores up, he heard the whistling in the air behind him. He ducked in reflex, avoiding the attack from a blade locust, and then swung his fist at its gut as he turned toward it. Purple fist strength. The abdomen was the hardest part of their body. Zen had learned that the hard way. Purple fist strength could channel a force through the insect's thick shell to the deeper, softer part of its body, where the effect would do more damage. Crack, crush, boof. With 7 dull thuds, the flood of force ripped its abdomen apart. The blade locust staggered before collapsing dead on the ground. One by one blade locusts rushed to Zen. He showed no fear, his parries steady and sure. Every punch took at least 1 blade locust, and as they kept dropping dead in front of him, it wasn't long before a pile of bodies rose like a small hill. While Zen battled, he noticed everyone else was fighting as desperately as he was. Roger walked among them casually, his sword in hand. Whenever a blade locust came near him, he would swing his sword and shoot a dark red light to pierce the blade locust in the blink of an eye. As befits a refiner at the nature level, he condensed his life vitality into a light, which sliced through the thick exoskeleton like paper. At the same time, Tank and Sun attacked vigorously. It was not their first time hunting blade locusts. Both of them were experienced fighters and aware of blade locusts' weak spots, which came in handy during the fight. Men from Green Haze Group drew together in a battle array against the raid of the blade locusts. Shield, spear, arrow, Although these noble clansmen were not as stalwart as the 4 men from the Cloud sect, their attack was reasonably effective under Martin's command. Crack! Zen snapped another blade from a blade locust and then poked its vulnerable head with his other hand, making it explode under the force. After he killed this one, there were no more living blade locusts around him. Only a few blade locusts were left, and they surrounded Roger, Martin and the others, and soon those locusts were killed as well. He looked around him. Dead bodies piled up. He estimated that there were about 60 blade locust carcasses. He would get 60 crystal cores, which equaled only 3 points. Zen smiled wryly as he started collecting the crystal cores from the dead bodies. It was a long, hard fight, yet his hard work only netted 3 points. He did some quick mental arithmetic in his mind. To earn 100 points, he would have to kill 20,000 blade locusts. Given his ability, if everything went right, it would take him 2 weeks to finish the task. Came to think of it, that wasn't a very steep price. In less than a month he could see his sister. Besides, he could improve himself during each battle. Thinking about the positives reinvigorated him, and he hastily dug out the remaining crystal cores. After the first wave of blade locusts, they continued along the edge of the forest. While they walked, Zen took the initiative, killing many blade locusts, and his number of crystal cores grew one by one. Alert! Another wave approaches. Several battles later, Zen was familiar with his new enemy's moves. Now, he easily spotted them through the sound of the wind ahead. Not far off branches stirred and then blade locusts came into view. But this time, something was different. Dozens of purple blade locusts were with this lot. Blade locust officers. Zen's eyes flickered at sight. These locusts were more valuable than the normal blade locusts. Each officer was worth 1 point, the equivalent of 20 normal blade locusts. Surely officers were harder to kill than normal blade locusts. All right, men, watch out. The officers are poisonous. Be careful of the needles, warned Martin. The truth was, only Zen needed the warning since everyone else already knew. A blade locust officer was a level 4 beast with a body comparable to a refiner who was a half step in the nature level. Sharp venomous spikes spread across its purple body, making it a savage foe. Martin's warning didn't make Zen flinch though. Instead, he charged forward fearlessly. Blade locust officers made clicking with their mandibles as if they were talking to each other when Zen rushed at them. The significant difference between the officers and ordinary locusts was that the officers were intelligent and could communicate. A half-dozen officers had reached a decision after their short discussion and fanned out in Zen's direction, and the next second he was surrounded. That was a little reckless, Zen. You've gotten yourself enclosed, called Martin from behind. Let's give him a hand, said Tank as he and Sun moved in closer. They fought side by side in the battle, and before long they warmed up to each other, becoming fast friends. So as soon as they saw Zen in danger, they hurried to lend him a hand. Roger was the only one who didn't move. He knew full well Zen was too cautious to make such a mistake. Zen would have thought it through before acting. So, Roger was secure in his belief that Zen could handle the situation. Standing there, Roger wondered what Zen's plan was. What tactic would he employ to deal with the 6 blade locust officers simultaneously? Roger's curiosity was piqued. Chapter 52. A rich harvest of crystal cores. Confronted with 6 blade locust officers at once would have even a hardiest refiner at the nature level quaking in his boots. A blade locust officer was more powerful, in both speed and strength, than the average blade locust. However, it was the venomous thorns that were the most frightening. In the desert, there was a scorpion whose deadly sting killed any creature that was stung, instantly, and, in the forest, there was a ghost-like butterfly whose powder was so toxic that it would make the area desolate for miles around. However, refiners at the nature level weren't usually frightened of those creatures, given that their life vitality could prohibit toxins from entering their bodies. Simply put, it was more difficult for toxins to affect their bodies. Differing from those 2 deadly creatures, the venom that the blade locust officers possessed wasn't fatal. Instead, the toxin severely paralyzed the victim and could break through the life vitality barrier to penetrate the human body. Even those who reached the nature level were unable to move once infected. Thus, when it came to fighting the blade locust officers, everyone needed to be on guard. After all, once paralyzed, one was nothing but food for blade locusts. Others feared the blade locust officer's poison, but not Zen. Considering his body was a mysterious weapon, there wasn't any poison that could harm him. Therefore, although it seemed foolhardy of him to rush at the Blade Locust officers alone, in actuality, he was quite prepared. As he leapt through the air, he slipped a ring on one finger, while the other was steadfast on the broken flying knife. They were the pair of copper rings with the invisible chain linking them that Master Su gave him. 6 Blade Locust leaders spread out around Zen, closing in on him while shrieking. Suddenly, purple thorns shot from their bodies at Zen. Facing an onslaught from stings that everyone else was desperate to avoid, Zen didn't duck and instead let them pierce his skin. At that moment, he threw the broken flying knife. Slash! As the flying knife flew through the air, Zen waved the hand he had the ring on controlling the invisible chain, and immediately the broken flying knife circled him. The razor-edge knife sliced deeply into each Blade Locust officer's head as it made its way around Zen. With that, Zen's strength was sapped, and he slumped to the ground. In midair, the heads of the 6 Blade Locust officers remained intact for a few seconds before separating awkwardly from their bodies, falling from the sky and slamming into the ground hard. The 6 officers were dead in a flash. Wow, that was awesome, Zen, that was fantastic, shouted Tank and others in amazement. Martin's eyes were filled with astonishment as well. As a centurion who fought Blade Locusts all year round, Martin should be the one who knew them best. He was well aware of how difficult it was to deal with the Blade Locust officers, especially their venomous stings. His skin was stabbed once by a thorn that a Blade officer shot. The result was that he was immediately paralyzed and laid in bed recovering for a week before his ability to move was restored. But, Zen was pierced by multiple stings just now. The spines had rained down on Zen in a downpour that even an elephant couldn't withstand, let alone a man. Remarkably, Zen was alive and kicking, without any ill effects. Is he even human? Murmured Martin in disbelief. Roger stood his ground, clasping his sword. Although he figured that Zen had made the first move because he was sure of being able to kill those Blade Locust officers, Zen's performance exceeded his expectations. I took the assignment because it was boring at the Cloud Sect. I never expected meeting such an interesting guy on my trip, muttered Roger under his breath as his eyes lit up in surprise. Talents like his are encouraging. As long as he doesn't die young, he's bound to be a hegemon, he thought. Although there's no need to draw him over to my side, perhaps I can give him a hand if he's in trouble in the future, he decided as he drew his sword from its sheath and faced the next wave of Blade Locusts. At this point, an unusually large number of Blade Locusts swarmed them, and a new round of shooting began. Enveloped in purple light from head to toe, Zen became bolder and bolder. A crystal core from a Blade Locust officer would earn him 1 point, and he had just beheaded 6 in one fell swoop, which was equivalent to 6 points he had gained. Fighting like this would earn him points much quicker than he could by killing ordinary Blade Locusts. But, Blade Locust officers differed from the common ones. They were intelligent, which meant they weren't prone to daredevil tactics like the average Blade Locusts. When the remaining officers saw that Zen had killed 6 of their cohorts in a single strike, they scattered and avoided him, while commanding more common ones to attack him. Zen kept swinging his arm. Under the strong outward force, the broken flying knife whirled violently around him. Whirl, whoosh, dozens of Blade Locusts charged Zen, but Zen adjusted his position, and they were sliced in half by the flying knife. Their remains were littering the ground. To Zen, the Blade Locusts were as defenseless as ants, even though others freaked out at the mere mention of them. Soon Blade Locust carcasses were piled up like a hill, and among them were the heads of several purple Blade Locust officers. There were many more of Blade Locusts than there had been in the previous waves, but thanks to the presence of Zen, the windmill, they were destroyed more quickly than before. After the dozens of Blade Locust officers were slaughtered, the remaining Blade Locusts withdrew. Since there was a heap of Blade Locust corpses on the ground waiting for Zen to pick through, gathering the spoils, he didn't give chase to the retreating Blade Locusts. Martin was puzzled at the sight of the Blade Locusts retreating, a thought flashed, and his face darkened at the possibility that came to his mind. No, impossible, retreat, everyone, fall back, shouted Martin in an urgent tone. Hearing Martin shouting, Zen stopped plucking crystal cores from within the Blade Locust officers' chests with his knife, and asked in bewilderment, what? Why? When ordinary Blade Locusts retreat, it means that there must be. Martin's face was white, and his fear gripped him, making him unable to finish his sentence. What? There must be what? Seeing the fear on Martin's face made Zen realize how dangerous the situation must be. Queen, Blade Locust, stammered Martin with a guttural grunt. He had been at the Dragon Fort for many years and knew the habits of the Blade Locusts, and that both the officers and the average Blade Locusts were under the orders of a Queen Blade Locust. The Blade Locust officers could think independently, but the real commander of the army was the Queen. Without independent thought, each common Blade Locust was a daredevil. No matter how formidable the enemy was, they wouldn't hesitate to attack, so, in general, they didn't have the concept of fleeing or retreating. In this aspect, they were natural warriors. On the other hand, since they were retreating, there must be a Queen Blade Locust near, calling them. The Queen was the sovereign mother of Blade Locusts. Once met, even refiners at the nature level needed to flee in haste, and only stronger refiners were able to battle her. If a queen appeared here, everyone present would surely perish. This was why Martin was so scared. In addition, he was confused about something. The daily tasks assigned to the Imperial Army by the Dragon Fort should not be this risky. Although the queens were frightening, there were also numerous powerful cultivators at the Dragon Fort, such as the well-known Flying Dragon General who had personally killed several Blade Locust queens. The Imperial Army did an excellent job of surveillance, and usually wouldn't assign such a dangerous task to the Green Haze Group. Therefore, it was not reasonable for the Green Haze Group to be sent to such a dangerous area. Unless someone is using this opportunity to destroy the Green Haze Group, thought Martin, appalled. He did not share his concerns. At the moment he just wanted to get his Green Haze Group back to the fort as fast as possible. At Martin's command, everyone stopped digging out crystal cores and headed to the fort immediately. However, just as they turned in the direction of the fort and safety, they felt a tremor in the ground. Boom, thud, boom, a massive creature was clumping closer. The noise got louder, and the ground shook more violently, telling them that the immense creature was approaching them rapidly. Hearts sank, and many soldiers and refiners alike gulped as they breathed. As predicted by Martin, a Queen Blade Locust was indeed nearby. Everyone wanted to survive and clambered to escape, fleeing like madmen. Zen ran at a consistent speed behind Roger, while the 4 disciples from the Cloud sect complained secretly. In such a large area outside the Dragon Fort, the probability of meeting a Queen Blade Locust was very small. Even if a queen left her nest once in a while, she would likely be beheaded by the mighty cultivators at the Dragon Fort, but unfortunately, they encountered one now. Just as the group was running through the jungle, a large red blade appeared in front of them. The trees that the blade passed through were leveled, and so were the dozen soldiers in front. Ah! The soldiers were cut in half and quickly devoured by ordinary Blade Locusts hiding as they shrieked. Zen and the Green Haze Group rushed to a halt. In front of them stood a Queen Blade Locust over 20 feet high blocking their way. She was a bright red color, with 2 large blades grinding against each other, and substantial compound eyes locked firmly in her enemies. Being stared by such an enormous beast, Zen felt a chill of horror run down his spine. At that moment, he had only one thought: run. Even in this crisis, Martin didn't raise the white flag. To the sides, as many as possible. He roared, "Everyone, run!" The superior qualities Martin possessed as a member of the Imperial Army were evident at this life-and-death moment. The words were hardly out of Martin's mouth when the Queen Blade Locust moved again. She was huge, but she moved incredibly fast. She deftly blocked the road to the side, her 2 giant blades cutting across the crowd again. At this crucial moment, Zen leapt into the air, narrowly avoiding the blade that was coming at him and rolled over it. Others were not as fortunate. 8 more men were cut down by the blades of the Queen. Standing behind the soldiers, Tank saw the giant blades bearing down on him, and it was too late for him to dodge. With a desperate yet determined look on his face, he gathered his strength and at the last moment, his entire body shimmered with a golden light. As a cultivator half-step into the nature level, he let loose a burst of remarkable power while he hung on by a thread. Ka-blam! Tank focused his golden aura from within his body to a single point, and shot it at the giant blades. In a tragic scene, Tank's fierce power stopped the Queen Blade Locust momentarily before her blades sliced him in 2, mercilessly. Chapter 53, Tragic Plight. Watching what happened to Tank, knocked his fellow disciples, Zen, Roger and Sun, for a loop. And they felt a massive sense of loss in their hearts. While the 4 of them hadn't deliberately sought each other out, they had become a close-knit team in a short time. There was an understanding among them from following and working closely with the Green Haze Group to fight the Blade Locusts. But, only a few hours after they formed the team, one of the 4 was killed on the spot. At this moment, naturally, the mood in their hearts was one of sorrow. They couldn't help mourning for Tank's fate. What if all of them died here today? As they were feeling sorry for themselves, Martin roared and shot an arrow aiming at the Queen Blade Locust's compound eye as he ran. As the arrow sailed through the air drawing near the Queen's eye, she extended her blade-like appendage, batting it from the sky, and it clattered harmlessly to the ground. In an uproar at the arrow, the Queen Blade Locust targeted Martin next, lumbering after him. "Everyone, just run, I'll distract the Queen and lead her away," yelled Martin, in apparent acceptance of his fate, whether life or death. Chasing Martin, the Queen Blade Locust was no longer blocking their way, giving others a slim chance of escaping. However, the situation was still grave. Aside from the Queen, there was a mass of Blade Locusts waiting, along with hundreds of Blade Locust officers. The soldiers of the Green Haze group lit their bamboo torches, sending smoke and flame billowing into the air. Whether ordinary Blade Locusts or the officers, they were repelled by the smoke, fearing it. They scattered in all directions. Finally, a passage cleared ahead of the troops. "Let's go, we're moving out," Zen called Sun. He was ready to leave, but, when he looked back, he saw Zen standing in a daze. "Zen, if we don't leave now, we'll die here," urged Roger, as he fidgeted, having a strange feeling in his gut. Zen thought a moment, turning to face Roger and Sun with a look of determination. He said, "Roger, Sun, you are my brothers. You go ahead, I'm going to help Martin. We'll catch you up later once we deal with the Blade Locust Queen." Not waiting for his brothers in arms to argue, Zen started running in the direction Martin disappeared. "What are you doing? Do you have a death wish? Don't you understand? You will die?" questioned Sun anxiously. Roger winked but didn't say anything. He was pretty good at reading people. Although Roger had met Zen only 2 days ago, he already understood Zen's unique character. Once he made up his mind, there was no use trying to sway him. No matter how fast Martin ran, the Queen Blade Locust ran more quickly, each step bringing her a few feet closer to Martin, and soon she would be on top of Martin. While the Queen Locust chased Martin in haphazard directions, Zen easily caught up by cutting a straight path through the woods. Now he was only 1,000 feet away from the Queen Blade Locust. After Zen began refining at the marrow level, he could hear and see farther away than before. He also acquired a better grasp of distances, thanks to the marrow refining level. The wind rushed past, whistling in Zen's ears. With his sweaty palms, he clutched the broken flying knife in his hand. As Zen drew closer, he felt excitement twisting faintly in his gut, but no fear. 500 feet away now. Closer now, he could make out the markings on the Queen Blade Locust at a glance. Only 200 feet. 100. The distance between the Queen Blade Locust and Martin was disappearing. As she prepared to overtake him, she raised her large blade high in the air. Martin knew there was little hope of survival as he faced the Queen Blade Locust alone. As a standard Imperial soldier on the verge of death, he wouldn't just give up, but would fight to his dying breath. As such, his eyes were filled with determination, courage, and strength. He let loose a battle cry at the top of his lungs. All of the muscles tensed, preparing for the action, and he lunged at the huge Queen Blade Locust. "It's time," exclaimed Zen. Timing it to the second, Zen focused strength to his feet and leapt high, propelling himself forward in the air. At the same time, he drew back his arm, aiming the knife before sending it sailing through the sky and to the Queen Blade Locust. The Queen Blade Locust was huge, while the knife was only half an arm's length. Even if the knife stuck into the Queen, it might not cause enough damage. So, Zen targeted the vital part of her forelimb. The timing of his shot was remarkably accurate. When the Queen Blade Locust was a few feet from Martin, the broken knife slashed through the crucial point of her forelimb. Although the carapace of the Queen was notably hard, the broken knife effortlessly sliced into it. Crack! In a split second, the blade cracked and was separated from the Queen's body. It fell to the ground with a heavy thud. Shocked, Martin stood frozen with a dumbfounded expression, as his mind took a moment to figure out what just happened. "Zzzzzztt," shrieked the Queen Blade Locust in agony. Both Zen and Martin felt a stabbing pain from her screech piercing their eardrums. The compound eyes on her head rolled around, searching for the source of pain, and soon focused on Zen nearby. She turned her fury on Zen, raising her other blade and swiftly hacking in a downward motion at him. Prepared for her retaliation, Zen evaded the horrible blow, sprinting away in the other direction. The blade came down hard, leaving a long crack in the ground. She pulled the blade back, and let loose a monstrous scream from her mandible. All her hatred was focused on Zen as she rushed him, forgetting Martin, her earlier target. Martin teetered on the brink of death, feeling like he would collapse at any second. As he watched the retreating form of the Queen Blade Locust, his chest heaved as profoundly, out of breath after his run. He never thought Zen would lead the Queen Blade Locust away just in time to save his life. The whistling wind rushed past his ears, and the woods fell away behind Zen on either side as Zen ran. Zen didn't choose any specific way because he had no idea where he was anyway. Aside from running onward with all his effort, he hadn't had time to think of a plan. The Queen Blade Locust was chasing after him at a crazy speed. Although she had only one blade left, for Zen, she was still an invincible being. Screech! Came the sound as a shadow of red flashed through the trees in the spot where Zen was a moment ago, leaving a 10-feet-long scar in the ground. The queen was obviously much faster than Zen. In seconds she would overtake Zen. What now? Questioned Zen, looking around frantically as his heart gradually sank. Faced with such a powerful opponent, he didn't hold out for the fight to go his way. Scraach! Came the ominous sound as the red shadow fell again, and at the same time the wind whizzed past. Zen surged up, avoiding the attack, and rolled forward out of reach. Colliding into shrubs and bramble as he made his way through the jungle, Zen saw a canyon come into view ahead. He looked around and noted that the canyon was about 70 or 80 feet wide. I'll have to jump the gorge, decided Zen quickly in mind. Racing to the edge of the canyon, Zen clenched his teeth, directed the strength of his entire body to the feet while pulling himself into the shape of a curved bow, and flexed as he launched. With the power of his kick-off, he thrust himself across the canyon. Mid-air, halfway across, the Queen Blade Locust jumped after him, as she spread her wings. She flew at Zen. Jerk! The Queen Blade Locust can fly! Yelled Zen into the empty sky, depressed. In reality, the Queen Blade Locust's body was too large, and she couldn't fly. The wings weren't strong enough to carry her up into the sky. But, using her strong hind limbs to propel upward, she could use her wings to glide on the air for short periods. In the meantime, the queen with her remaining red blade outstretched was gaining on Zen, quickly. What am I going to do? This will kill me. Zen couldn't stop his mind from turning to thoughts of death as he soared through the air. He couldn't dodge the red blade this time and watched as the tremendous red blade bit down on him. At this crucial moment, a desperate desire rose in Zen's heart to survive. No, I can't die now. There's still so much left for me to do. Spat Zen suddenly, his eyes bloodshot red. Faced with impending doom, Zen pressed his knife against his arm. And as he did, he raised it to block the Queen Blade Locust's blade. Claw-ash! The violent force connected with the broken knife but didn't break it. Sure enough, the toughness of the knife could handle blocking the attack of the Queen Blade Locust's blade. OFF! Gasped Zen as the wind was knocked out of him from the force of the blade clashing into the dagger. Spitting, Zen sent a large mouthful of blood splattering through the air. He felt the veins on his forehead throb, and his blood coursing through his body as if his organs were shattered. Fortunately, Zen's corporeal form was unique. If anyone else had taken such a fierce strike directly, like Zen had, whether they were a master at the marrow refining level or at the nature level, they would be dead. Zen transformed most of the power he absorbed from this energy into a warm current that continually penetrated his bones and rinsed his marrow. Unfortunately, the rest of the power from the blow injured him greatly as it was too much for him to bear. With the help of energy he could use, Zen flew higher, gliding hundreds of feet above the ground until he was across the deep chasm. Falling fast, he landed on the soft ground below. Too-wood! The ground shook from the shock of his impact. The Queen Blade Locust landed on the ground seconds after Zen and sped at him. Lying on the ground, Zen felt as though his body had been ripped to shreds. He didn't want to move. However, when he saw the Queen Locust rushing closer, he spat bloody saliva and swore while he forced himself up, enduring the pain from his fall, and darted in the direction away from the queen. Being chased for another 1,000 feet, Zen came to the mouth of a large cave. He turned and looked at the jungle, spreading endlessly. When he sprinted away, he'd expected to find a place to duck into. But there was no place to hide from the Queen Blade Locust. Without thinking, Zen could only seek refuge in the cave. For humans, caves were far more dangerous inside than the outside. Especially caves out in the wild, who knew what powerful creatures called the caves home. But Zen had no choice at the moment. It was futile to continue running. Zen could only hope there would be a chance for him to survive somehow in the cave. When Zen got into the cave, the Queen Blade Locust saw and followed close behind him without any hesitation. Hell-bent on killing Zen, she just wouldn't give up. It was such a spacious cave that even the large Queen Blade Locust was able to walk freely inside. Fortunately, the cave also curved along, so that, although she was faster outside, inside the cave, Zen was quicker. Therefore, the distance between them wasn't shortened. As Zen went deeper and deeper into the cave, the thick smell of sulfur penetrated his nose. What was below this cave? Chapter 54. Giant Beast at Lava Lake. The cave was dark, with only the faint light filtering through the entrance behind him, making it difficult for Zen to see ahead. He had no time to consider what could be hidden in the dark recesses of the cave, with his biggest problem behind him and moving closer. As she made her way into the cave, the Queen Blade Locust smashed stalagmites and stalactites chasing after Zen. Only the heavens knew whether or not the Queen Blade Locust had a keen sense of smell or Zen was leaving marks behind him. Whatever the case, it seemed easy for the giant insect to find him, even in a maze of caves like this. The further down they went, the thicker and more pungent the sulfur odor became. As he rushed into a connecting cavern, Zen discovered a red light illuminated the spacious cave. Before Zen was an underground lake of magma surging. One after another, dark red flames burst up from the lake only to explode in a poof. This was the fire of the Earth's core. It was recorded in ancient tomes that the fire came from the Earth's core. The weapon refiners much preferred the fire of the Earth's core, because it was more primal, rather than the fire of life vitality that was in the refiner's body. The fire of the Earth's core had a miracle effect when refining certain special magic weapons. Undoubtedly, the sulfur smell emanated from this pool of magma. Boom, boom, a low sound of rumbling thunder echoed through the cavern. The Queen Blade Locust was getting nearer again. Dang, Zen blurted out uneasily. He saw a passage at the side of the lake of magma, and he ran over to it. The bank of the lava lake was heated by the fire from the Earth's core. Therefore, the ground was like a hot frying pan under Zen's feet. All he wanted was to run for his life right then, so, he went through the heat at high speed, not turning back. Ka-blam! The sound of exploding magma spurted fire through the air, splashing it in Zen's direction. Without hesitation, Zen dropped and rolled, avoiding being splattered with the fires. Immediately, he heard the stone wall next to him, sizzling, as the fiery magma that had just skimmed past his back, burned a large hole in the wall. He noticed the wall was pitted with holes, like scars it had gotten from years of molten lava hitting it. Well aware of the danger now, Zen was more cautious. He couldn't imagine what his fate would be if the fire of Earth's core hit him. Soon, the Queen Blade Locust was next to the lake. An exoskeleton covered the giant insect, but she was also afraid of fire. So the Queen Blade Locust pursued Zen around the lake's shoreline. Thank goodness, thought Zen. She was too big to dodge the bursts of flames. By contrast, Zen was more flexible. Adding to her plight, the quaking of the Queen Locust's heavy footsteps caused the lava to splash regularly, slowing her progress even more. Zen was elated at the growing distance between the Queen Blade Locust and himself. He started to think he would escape successfully. No sooner than Zen was almost free of one quandary, he looked ahead and found himself facing another. His face grew pale, and his mouth fell open slightly. Ahead of him was a shockingly huge creature blocking his passage. It looked like a lion, yet its body was at least 10 times bigger than a lion's. The beast was covered with a fiery red mane, with its giant head resting on its mighty front paws, and a scorpion-like tail wagging gently as it slept soundly. A fire scorpion lion, screamed Zen in his head. The striking, yet terrifying name reverberated in his mind. Zen had never seen a fire scorpion lion before, but he'd read about the creature. Based on their scorpion-like tails and high-temperature habitats, fire scorpion lions were easily recognized. Fire scorpion lions were among the scariest animals in the world, especially the deadly weapon they had for a tail. Even the strongest masters of the nature refining level didn't have much chance of escape. These fierce beasts were widely distributed throughout the world in ancient times, but in the eastern region currently, they were threatened with extinction. The reason the animal was on the brink of extinction was the ultra-rare crystal core in its body. The crystal core in the fire scorpion lion was a very masculine object used in pill and weapon refining. It was an exceptional raw material top refiners dreamed of having. With the greedy and reckless characters in the eastern region, when a fire scorpion lion was exposed, it attracted thousands of people wanting to hunt it down. However, Zen was not interested in obtaining the crystal core of a fire scorpion lion. Right now, he only wanted to manage to stay out of trouble. Snoring loudly, the fire scorpion lion's sleep was undisturbed. In light of his predicament, Zen decided to attempt to go around the fire scorpion lion. But, what if he accidentally woke it up? Then it would be his path to death. What should I do? Venture ahead, or not? Wondered Zen, stuck between a rock and a hard place. If he turned back though, he was a meal for the queen blade locust. So, forward was as good a choice for him as back. Keeping an eye on the long fangs of the fire scorpion lion, and thumping tail, Zen took a deep breath before he started to step closer cautiously. As he approached, the unpleasant odor of the beast assaulted his nose. He managed to handle the smell as he walked softly and slowly. 20 steps away, 10 steps closer, another 5 steps. As Zen took each step, he clenched his teeth to calm his pounding heart. When he was only 3 steps away, the fire scorpion lion suddenly rolled over, stretching his long limbs. His heart was thudding so fast, that Zen thought it would burst from his chest. Luckily, after a stretch and yawn, the fire scorpion lion curled up, resting his large head back on his front paws, fast asleep again. Relieved a little, but still holding his breath, Zen continued to tiptoe forward. As the saying goes, misfortunes never come alone. Thud, thud, came the sound of the queen locust's footfall as it reverberated off the cave walls, echoing. Focused on the fire scorpion lion in front of him, Zen had forgotten the queen blade locust behind him, for a moment. What trash, cussed Zen silently. Awakened by the noise, the fire scorpion lion's eyes flew open. The creature looked as surprised by the sight of the small man standing near, as Zen was by the lion waking up. Shaking its mane and growling angrily, the fire scorpion lion pounced at Zen. Zen dodged in a flash. It was just like a game of cat and mouse. Since Zen responded so quickly, the fire scorpion lion missed him. Growling furiously, the giant beast crouched, ready to stalk and pounce again. But the fire scorpion lion paused suddenly, noticing the queen blade locust approaching. Zen knew an epic battle was about to begin. How do I get out? Am I screwed? Wondered Zen desperately. No matter which way he chose, he saw no way to survive. Ignoring the small man, the queen blade locust faced off with the fire scorpion lion. Each beast was arrogant about their strength, and neither side was willing to yield. Waving her big red blade, the queen blade locust created loud clacking sounds to warn the fire scorpion lion to back off. Sharpening his claws against the hard stone ground, the fire scorpion lion was anything but fearful. It was as though time froze, and Zen felt as though a century passed in the tick of a minute. The queen blade locust impatiently attacked first. Bellowing a mighty roar, the fire scorpion lion raised his head, preparing for the fight. In the center of the behemoth's battlefield stood Zen. Out of desperation, Zen decided to try his luck with the lava and jumped into the lake. The fiery lava boiled vigorously, swallowing him instantaneously. Chapter 55, Transformation into the Spiritual Weapon. At the moment, the two huge beasts were too busy focusing on each other to notice Zen. One of the beasts, the queen blade locust, had a broken limb from her earlier scuffle with Zen. In spite of being at a disadvantage, the one remaining limb was still a powerful lethal weapon shaped like the blade of a sword. Alongside her blade, the queen blade locust was a little bigger than the fire scorpion lion. Although the fire scorpion lion was smaller than the queen blade locust, it was nimbler. Further, since the lava cave was the fire scorpion lion's natural habitat, it had an advantage. As soon as the beasts collided in battle, the cave shook, rocks tumbled, and the cavern floor was littered with rubble. Rocks fell from high up on the walls of the cave, and fire spouted out of the earth's core. Crash, bam, ba boom, loud clashing sounds ensued as the fire scorpion lion threw the queen blade locust on the floor swiftly. In spite of the aggressive attack, the queen blade locust forcibly stomped the ground with her hind legs, thrusting the fire scorpion lion backward about 1 foot. Immediately, the queen rushed towards the lion and flung her enormous blade at the fire scorpion lion. However, the lion evaded her attack and snarled before retaliating. The locust, which could only survive by slaughtering, was much more courageous and brutal than ordinary beasts. Scratch, came the horrifying sound of the blade slicing into the flesh of the fire scorpion lion. Its heart and other organs spilled out. The fire scorpion lion, mortally injured, wailed mournfully. At the same time, cocking its nimble tail up, the lion slashed at the queen blade locust's head. Snap, The Queen Blade Locust couldn't dodge in time, resulting in her head splitting and falling to the ground because of the force of Scorpion Tail. Without her head, the Queen's body became limp, and the blade trembled for a moment before her carcass slumped to the ground. The lion's organs were rent into pieces, and the large lion whimpered before tilting his head and gasping his last breaths. People became apprehensive at the mere mention of these two huge beasts. They would be awestruck to see the two dead in this cave at the same time. At first, when faced with the two beasts, Zen thought he was doomed to perish. Earlier, he was roasted by Evil Land's fire. Instead of being harmed, Zen became physically stronger, thereby becoming comparable to a top-grade mysterious weapon. But, the fire from the Earth's core was different from Evil Land's Grade 2 fire. It was many times stronger than Evil Land's fire. After all, Evil Land was only a half step into the nature level. In the strictest sense, his fire evolved from his life energy rather than life vitality. However, the Earth's core fire was much mightier than the fire produced by any nature-level weapon refiners even with life vitality. Zen felt the sensation of burning as soon as he jumped into the lava. He had experienced the same pain twice before, once in the cellar of the Luo family and the other was in Evil Land's weapon refining furnace, so, in this cave, it came to be that he felt it for the third time. In his current position, he knew that aside from gritting his teeth and toughing it out, he was helpless. He could pray to the god to bless his success against the Earth's core fire, keeping his corporeal form from being incinerated, but there was nothing more he could do. Slowly, his complexion started to change. Overall, Zen looked like a red-hot piece of iron, glowing dark red. As his body heated up and burned, countless little gold pieces appeared on his body. Subsequently, they started to rotate. As they whirled faster and faster, the gold pieces changed into golden eddies and began to absorb the fire from the Earth's core. The fire that engulfed Zen was swiftly taken into the eddies and absorbed by Zen. However, the swirls covering Zen's body were not satisfied. After absorbing all the fire surrounding Zen, the eddies generated a mightier force and pulled the Earth's core fire from farther away. Wisps, streaks, and flakes of fire were sucked in by a gravitational force, madly rushing into Zen's body. All the Earth's core fire within the large lava lake rapidly converged in his body. If anyone was present outside the lava lake at that moment, they would be astounded at the sight. In the center of the lake where the lava had been boiling, the lava's color gradually changed from red to black as it cooled. At last, the lava was pitch black and solid. As the pitch black area expanded, more and more lava cooled, becoming solid carbon black rocks. At last, the entire lake was a sizable hardened rock. Except for a few spots where the lava remained slightly dark red, the cave, which had been bright, now was in complete darkness. A long while later, the lava lake suddenly cracked in the center, and a hand shot out from the crack. It was Zen's hand reaching upward, with a few pieces of gold foil glittering with a golden light. Afterward, Zen hit the solid lava with his head, smashing it. He crawled out of the broken rock. A sweet smile spread across Zen's face as it dawned on him that he had survived an impossible situation. Everything that had transpired was far beyond his ability to comprehend. When he jumped into the lake of lava to escape from certain doom, shockingly, his body absorbed the Earth's core fire in the lake. Perhaps his physical strength was improved after being refined by the flames. He looked down at his body and noticed that his chest had a wave-like texture to it. Seeing the change, Zen was puzzled. In the back of his mind, he felt as though he'd seen that texture, and he recognized the pattern from somewhere. After contemplating the design, it struck him where he'd seen it. Clapping his hands, he shouted, "Yes! I remember now, it's a spiritual texture." Zen had seen such textures in the books of weapon refining techniques left by Evil Land. Weapons fell into a few classes. They were mysterious, spiritual, fairy, sacred and divine weapons. Except there were no unique textures on mysterious weapons, special characters similar to this were found only on treasures like spiritual, fairy, and sacred weapons. For instance, spiritual textures were on spiritual weapons and fairy textures on fairy weapons. A streak of spiritual texture showed up on Zen's chest, which meant his body had possibly entered a different stage, turning from a mysterious weapon into a spiritual weapon. Zen knew how mysterious weapons differed from spiritual weapons. During the blooded test, he suffered horrific injuries from the dagger, which was one of spiritual weapons that Ryan used. Ryan would have defeated Zen if it wasn't for his body possessing the might of a top-grade mysterious weapon. Once Zen's body evolved into a spiritual weapon, his strengths would be naturally and significantly enhanced regardless of what he was capable of withstanding. That brought the most critical point to Zen's mind. The most remarkable difference between spiritual and mysterious weapons isn't in their tenacity or sharpness. Instead, each spiritual weapon has a unique, extraordinary skill of its own. Like, Ryan's had a mighty silk energy thread he could summon, murmured Zen to the empty cavern. Since my body has been upgraded now to the equivalent spiritual weapon, I wonder what kind of skill I will gain. Wondering about the possibilities excited Zen even more. Now, how do I trigger the skill of the spiritual weapon though? Reflected Zen. Standing on the solid lake, Zen extended one hand out, breathed in and out, and loudly shouted, "Hi!" Rushing ahead 2 steps, he raised one leg, spinning in the air as he did, executing a spinning kick. As he went through the motions, Zen's moves looked awkward. After some trials and erroneous moves, Zen stood still, scratched his head and chuckled, thinking he was behaving idiotically. Since he didn't even know if he had a spiritual weapon skill, it was impossible for him to test it the way he was. When Zen stopped performing the senseless actions, the gold foil covering his body suddenly vanished from sight, leaving the cave in darkness all over again. Zen pulled a fire starter out of his space ring. As he rubbed it, the cave lit up. He looked around and saw nothing but the corpses of the Queen Blade Locust and Fire Scorpion Lion. Earlier, when he jumped into the lake of lava, he had wondered whether or not the 2 massive beasts would battle each other. Now, Zen felt he was overthinking everything. These wild creatures were more ferocious than he had imagined, and Zen couldn't help shaking his head and sighing at the miserable, wasted deaths of these 2 creatures. As he headed in the direction of an exit and after he took 2 steps, he smacked himself in the forehead, thinking his brain was addled from the burning in the lake. If the crystal cores from ordinary Blade Locusts and Blade Locust officers could be exchanged for some points, then, couldn't the crystal core from within the Queen Blade Locust be exchanged for an even greater sum of points? It would be such a waste to leave the Queen Blade Locust's crystal core there. While Zen thought, his heart raced. Tiptoeing to the Queen Blade Locust, Zen took his knife out of the space ring and thrust it into her chest. Clank, tink, came the melodious sound of a fist-sized purple crystal core hitting stone as it tumbled out of the locust and clattered to the ground. The crystal core of the Blade Locust officer is only as big as a walnut, but the Queen's crystal core is as large as a man's fist. Exclaimed Zen while he tucked the purple crystal core into his space ring. After that, he turned his focus to the Fire Scorpion Lion's corpse. Zen didn't know if a Fire Scorpion Lion's crystal core could be exchanged for points. He did know how rare the lion's crystal core was, and that it was the most valuable treasure among pill refiners and weapon refiners. Without analyzing it further, Zen cut the corpse of the Fire Scorpion Lion with his knife and dug out the crystal core. Treasures could be found over the entire body of a supernatural beast. Human beings could become even mightier than supernatural monsters if they took advantage of these treasures. Zen wanted to make use of the Fire Scorpion Lion's tail, so, with his broken knife, he sliced it off. Wanting to take back the Queen's blade, Zen checked his space ring, trying to make it fit, but there wasn't enough space to hold it, so he gave up. He could have carried it, but since the Blade Locusts had a keener sense of smell than human beings, if Zen had it on him, he would be attacked by any Blade Locust he encountered. After taking what booty he could take, Zen walked back through the cave in the direction he had entered it. He retraced his steps because of how unusual the cave was. With one shocking beast like Fire Scorpion Lion inside, Zen thought the chances were greater of encountering more terrifying creatures further in the cave. In light of surviving the attack from the Queen Blade Locust and coming face to face with the Fire Scorpion Lion, he attributed mainly to his good luck, realizing he would have had no chance of survival if not for being able to withstand the lake of lava and the Earth's core fire within it. Rushing back through the caves, Zen wasn't paying close attention and didn't know if he had gone in the right direction for a minute. Along the way, Zen took a few wrong turns and met some Class 3 beasts. He had some great adventures, as well as near misses, and several hours later, he emerged from the cave. By the time he got back up to the world outside the cave, night had fallen, and it was dark. The sky sparkled brilliantly with millions of stars. Zen realized as he looked up how late it must be. Zen carefully made his way back across the canyon and jungles, running along the paths he had followed during the daylight in the direction of the Dragon Fort. Fortunately, Blade Locusts spent their night ensconcing in their lairs, only venturing out under the rarest of unusual situations because they weren't nocturnal by nature. Any other beasts that would normally be out hunting at night were driven away by the insect aggression. Therefore, Zen didn't run into any beasts as he made his way through the thick jungles. It took him a long time, but, finally, the dragon fort came into his view. Once he reached the dragon fort, Zen strode to the building where Martin lived. Martin was housed with other members of the Green Haze group in the barracks. Zen saw 2 guards stationed outside the barracks as he approached the building. When the guards saw Zen, they immediately raised their lances, shouting, "Halt! Who goes? This is the barrack of the Green Haze group. No visitors are welcome late at night. Leave immediately." Chapter 56, Persuading Roger. "It's me, Zen Luo. I want to speak with Martin, if I might, please," stated Zen as he neared the door. As the light from the torches shone on Zen, the 2 soldiers could see it was him, and there was a look of shock on each man's face. With a grateful tone, one of the guards said, "Hey brother. I can't believe it. You're alive, thank goodness." The 2 were soldiers of the Green Haze group, or more accurately, surviving members of the troop. Usually, Martin's battle plans were impressive, and he took many precautions, so he never jeopardized the lives of soldiers in his platoon, and there was rarely a death under his command. However, in the battle that day, dozens of soldiers perished, which was a terrible blow to the Green Haze group. The survivors knew that if Zen hadn't drawn the Queen Blade Locust away, none of them would have survived. If Martin were the only one to have drawn the Queen away, she would have caught up to the troops after killing Martin. Thus, it was Zen's sacrifice that saved the rest of them. So, the survivors would be eternally grateful for what Zen did. Until just now, they all thought Zen died. So, they were astounded at his safe return. The soldiers knew that Zen was an outer disciple from the Cloud sect, and although he was only at the marrow refining level, Zen was stronger than other disciples at that same level. Even with his strength though, the gap between his power and that of the Queen Blade Locust was immense. They didn't know how Zen escaped. "Zen, the captain isn't at the camp," one of the soldiers informed Zen. Wondering why, Zen asked, "Wait, you mean he hasn't come back?" "Oh, no, he came back, but..." The soldier broke off his reply, not sure whether or not he should disclose the truth. Seeing the soldier's concerned look, Zen was confused and asked, "But what? What happened?" "Zen, the captain was locked up," announced the soldier in a sad tone as he bowed his head. Zen frowned and in a deeper timbre asked, "Locked up? But, why?" "Yesterday, someone changed our regular marching route. It must have been someone who intended for us to travel a more dangerous trail." The soldier stopped relating what had occurred, inhaling before he suddenly furrowed his brows indignantly and with an inflection of resentment in his voice said, "Captain Martin went to the higher-ups and complained, angering his superior officer. So, he was arrested. I'm afraid they will punish him for insubordination accordingly, by martial law." "How did this happen?" speculated Zen. What the soldier had conveyed to him irritated Zen. Someone had intentionally changed their route, endangering all of the troops in the Green Haze platoon, and almost succeeded in getting them all killed. The disciples from the Cloud sect, Roger, Sun, and Zen almost died, while a single slash from the Queen Blade Locust brutally destroyed core tank. Examining the events in his mind, Zen became infuriated. Granted, Zen had only known Martin for a short time, but he appreciated Martin's leadership skills. On top of that, Martin courageously sacrificed himself by luring the Queen Locust away, saving his troops and the disciples. It was shocking to hear soldiers on the same side as him arrested him. "Do you know anyone with authority who can assist us and intercede to have our captain's charges dropped, Zen?" Captain Martin wasn't in the wrong, and shouldn't have been unfairly punished. All at once, both soldiers begged Zen. Albeit, the 2 were the most ordinary soldiers in the Imperial Army, but they had followed Martin for a long time and had a deep relationship with him. In the torchlight, Zen could see their eyes glistening with tears. "Don't worry, I'm going to request an account of the events," reassured Zen callously. Admittedly, Zen was nobody special here or at the Cloud sect, but that wouldn't stop him from trying. After leaving the Green Haze group's barracks, Zen jogged to the building he was assigned to and swung the door open. He entered and saw Roger and Sun packing their things. Sun's jaw dropped open when he saw Zen walking into the room, and he stuttered, "Zzz Zen. Aar or Yyuagg ghost." Roger, who was ordinarily so composed, stood, staring at Zen in bewilderment as well. "Oh my goodness, Zen. Wow, this is unbelievable. You escaped the Queen Blade Locust. Did a master come along and save you?" Allowing for Zen's strength, Roger thought Zen's surviving the Queen Locust attack was impossible without the aid of a much stronger refiner. With so many powerful generals stationed at the Dragon Fort, it wasn't unreasonable for Zen to have been lucky enough to run into one out in the jungle. Roger deemed his theory to be the most reasonable explanation. Not bothering to respond to the questions, Zen just stared at them and inquired, "Are you already leaving?" Smiling, Sun responded, "Yes, I'm quitting the mission." Shrugging, Roger added in a bored tone, "I suppose. I wasn't in it for the points anyway. And, what about Martin? Yesterday, Martin risked his life to save us. Do you know where he is now?" demanded Zen angrily. Feeling slightly embarrassed, Sun had his cheeks turned pink, and he stated, "Zen, don't look at me. I'm merely an outer disciple from the Cloud sect. What could I do about this matter?" Roger looked offended. While it was true that Martin lured the Queen away yesterday, his primary goal was to save his troops. By the same token, and for reasons known only to him, Roger didn't need to be rescued anyway. True, Roger couldn't rival the Queen Blade Locust's strength. However, if he needed to, he could have used his mysterious weapons and escaped without difficulty. In point of fact, Roger could easily intervene and bail Martin out. It would be a piece of cake to rescue Martin, and initially, he wanted to. However, when he discovered it might be big trouble for himself, Roger decided to stay out of the matter. But now, Zen's words had overtones of calling Roger a coward which made him feel uncomfortable, so he arrogantly rebutted, "Zen, I won't meddle in Martin's matter, and I advise you not to involve yourself as well. The person behind it isn't one you should provoke." "I shouldn't provoke him. Who is it? Roger, will you tell me?" Zen inquired. "The Zoog clan is behind it," declared Roger menacingly. Roger watched Zen expecting to see a look of panic in his eyes, considering that the top 7 clans had a well-known reputation throughout the entire empire and that they were too large for Zen to go up against any of them. However, Roger saw no such fear. As a matter of fact, Zen remained expressionless. As it sunk in, Zen guffawed and asked, "The Zoog clan, again? Ha ha ha, I understand now." "Zen, what do you mean?" Curiosity compelled Roger to ask. Intending to murder Zen, someone within the Zoog clan devised this plot, without caring for any other life in the Green Haze group. They were just utilizing the platoon to push Zen into a desperate situation, not expecting he might be fortunate and escape. Regrettably, many innocent people died, including Tank. Zen didn't offer Roger a response, but, instead mockingly asked, "Roger, you are afraid of the Zoog clan?" "The Zoog clan? Me, afraid of them?" Angered, Roger's face was flushed. Typically, he was reserved, but his pride was at stake, and he blurted out, "The Zoog clan might have power, but the Meng clan is prominent as well. Of course, I'm not afraid of them." As one of the top 7 clans, the Meng clan was known for their wealth and talented members which were on a par with the Zoog clan. When people first heard Roger's surname and witnessed his proud temperament and magnificent clothing, they knew he was one of the Meng clan. However, since everyone was here to hunt blade locusts, they didn't care about Roger's identity. "Well, in that case, why don't you save Martin?" challenged Zen. "I'm not going to go looking for trouble over this. Plus, the loony friend Zoog came up with the scheme," asserted Roger smoothly. Children born into a prominent clan had the intrinsic sense of self-preservation and knew how to weigh the pros and cons in any given situation. It was okay if Roger helped Martin as long as it didn't lead to trouble for him, but it was stupid to provoke anyone from the Zoog clan just to assist Martin. Zen's dare was transparent. How could he think Roger wouldn't know his true intentions? Warily, Zen chuckled and pleaded, "Roger, help me this one time, please. I'll remember the kindness from you and the Meng clan." Shaking his head, Roger Meng responded, "Zen, I'll admit, you're talented, but that isn't enough of a reason for me to help you." In all honesty, Roger wanted to befriend Zen, who was an uncommon genius even for Cloud Sect and might very well be an influential figure in the future, but the future was far off, and after weighing the pros and cons Roger decided he couldn't help Zen. Offending friend for Zen's sake would be a stupid move in Roger's opinion. Sure, if Zen were an invincible master already, Roger would help him, but Zen wasn't. Despite Zen exhibiting an exceptional talent for refining, he could end up in an abyss for offending anyone in the top 7 noble clans. Just then, a look crossed Zen's face, and he reached into his space ring and pulled out the crystal core he had gotten from the Queen Blade Locust. He waved it in front of Roger and Sun, exclaiming, "Roger, no one saved me yesterday. The Queen Blade Locust is dead, because of me. That loony friend tried to get me killed several times until now, and yet, I'm still alive. I'm bound to rise higher in the future. I'm confident I'll be in a position to help the Meng clan, one day. The fist-sized crystal core gleamed brightly in Zen's hand, reflecting light onto Zen's proud, young face. Zen's words sounded impertinent, but exuded confidence. Seeing the crystal core in Zen's hand shocked Roger. It wasn't that Roger cared about a crystal core, but the fact that Zen had it meant the Queen Blade Locust was dead. While it wasn't clear whether or not Zen killed the Queen Blade Locust himself, it was obvious that Zen was somehow connected to her demise. Chapter 57. Teaching a Fish How to Swim. What Zen had accomplished was far beyond Roger's understanding of marrow refining level. After chasing after the Queen Blade Locust, in the insane manner Zen did, he not only survived but dealt with her and brought back her crystal core. Contemplated Roger in awe. His mouth formed a thin, sour line. You talk a big talk, and it sounds great, but it's just empty talk. He said, chuckling abruptly, his head bobbing so hard that the ponytail in the back of his head shook. But there was a serious look on Roger's face. He paused and then added, I like it. You're very ambitious, Zen. So, I have decided to get involved and help you with this mess. At Roger's acceptance to help, Zen's face lit up. Almost nothing was unsolvable when one of the top 7 noble clans was involved because no one would dare push back except another member of the same elite class. So, since Roger consented to assist in resolving the issue, things would go much smoother. One thing though, Zen. What did you mean when you told me that friend the loony had attempted to kill you multiple times? Roger asked unexpectedly. It's sort of a long story. My dispute with the Zug family came about during the blooded test at the Cloud Sect, stated Zen. After a brief pause, he recounted the stories of what happened that got Chad kicked out from the blooded test and how he severely beat friend the loony's steward, Thomas at Drizzle Peak. With Roger staying to lend a hand with things, Sun gave up his plans to leave, even though he knew his presence wouldn't really do much. Everyone acted for their reasons, and in Sun's case, he decided, since Roger thinks highly of Zen, there's no harm in befriending him. Shortly thereafter, the three turned in, sleeping the rest of the night soundly, and the next morning, first thing, the 3 men strode to the Dragon Fort's center. Housed in the Dragon Fort were thousands of barracks for squads, and the main barracks were surrounded in the middle. Standing before the gates that led to the main barracks were 2 rows of stoic soldiers at attention, clutching spears and expressionless. As the trio reached the gates, a soldier snapped to life and shouted, "You have no business here. You need to leave." With an air of authority, Roger took 2 steps towards the soldier and calmly said, "I'm here to see John go." "Officer Go?" asked the soldier, the determined look on the soldier's face softening the instant Roger spoke the name John Go. Any man, who referred to a superior by full name, wouldn't be just some ordinary person, and what was more, he uttered it casually, as if he were merely summoning one of his servants. Immediately, the soldier became polite and deferential. He tossed his spear to the nearest soldier and bowed to the 3 disciples. "Officer Go is in the main barracks, now. If you could give me your name, I will inform him of your arrival, okay?" The soldier asked respectfully. "You can tell him that Roger is requesting to see him." Roger had an inflection of tedium. After the soldier got Roger's name, he scurried off to the main barracks. A short time passed before the soldier came back into view. He was smiling appealingly as he sauntered back. His smile and even strut were because when he told John Go, who was usually aloof, that Roger wanted to see him, he grew enthusiastic, more so than the soldier had ever seen, and even repeated his response, saying, "Yes, show them in at once. Yes, show them in at once." Not being naive, the soldier understood immediately that Roger was some big shot. "If you 3 would follow me, please. Officer Go is in the main barracks waiting to receive you," announced the soldier happily. Following the soldier, Zen, Roger, and Sun walked through the main compound and were soon in front of John Go. Seeing Roger, John Go was all smiles and warmly said, "Young Master Roger, why didn't you tell me that you were at the Dragon Fort? If I had known, I would have prepared a nice treat for you." While he gushed and fussed happily, John Go received a lukewarm response in return. "The South has such poor products though, aside from blade locusts, what does the Dragon Fort have?" quipped Roger coolly. "What treat would you offer me?" Even though he was given the cold shoulder, John Go beamed happily. "That's not true," he retorted half-heartedly. "The South has specialties all its own, young Master Roger. You can't speculate that. Cut the garbage. Enough pleasantries, I've come because I have business with you, Roger cut in, impatiently, not caring how John Go would feel. You've got a Martin Liu here, right? John Go's expression became serious, and he nodded. Yes, he's the leader of the Green Haze group. Are you here for him, young Master Roger? Yes, release him, Roger ordered as he gave a small nod. When John Go heard Roger's request, he hesitated and stated, Young Master Roger, I'm obligated to accept your orders. Then pausing a moment, he stared into Roger's eyes and added, however, while it would be a small thing to release Martin, please let me remind you. Yes, I am aware, Roger impatiently cut John Go off again. Even before John Go finished, Roger knew what he was about to say. But, the Zoog family. John Go blurted out, unsure if Roger truly understood what he was trying to say. I know that, John, I already told you that. Snapped Roger, his face set and hard. Immediately, John Go nodded briskly and said, well, all right then, if you insist, I won't worry about it, young master. Follow me. He led the three men deeper into the main barracks. Deep in the main grounds, there was a courtyard, where 4 people sat at a blue stone table. It was laden with fruits, wine, meat, and many other tasty foods. While the Imperial Army was permitted drinking, it wasn't allowed in the barracks, and anyone caught would face disciplinary action. But, the 4 men were sitting around drinking, unconcerned that they were violating the rules. Actually, we should drink a toast to you, Randall, Liam said laughing as he went on, without you, things wouldn't have gone so smoothly. Raising his glass, Liam then chugged his drink down. To the toast offered, Randall he tilted his head back and let the wine slide into his lopsided mouth before casually saying, don't mention it, Master Fren entrusted the assignment to me, and it was a piece of cake. Was it easy? We've been stuck in this barren place for 3 days so far, and we still have a few more days before we can leave. The Black Fiend complained irritably as he grabbed the wine jug roughly and drank from it. I know, agreed the White Fiend, I should have beaten him to death, then, we wouldn't be sitting here, waiting around. No, you two, it's not as simple as that. When there's a death of a Cloud Sect's disciple that is suspicious in the Dragon Fort jurisdiction, the Dragon Fort doesn't sit idly by, remarked Randall he. Zen's body hasn't been found yet, but, the Queen Blade Locust was chasing him, so he must be dead by now. Liam nodded, adding, Zen's a tough guy, but he won't survive against the Queen Blade Locust. We just need to be patient for a few more days, and then we can inform Master Fren the assignment is completed. With a smile on his lips, he raised his glass and said, cheers, cheers. Oblivious to Zen and the others approaching, the 4 men sat around, drinking, toasting each other and bragging about their accomplishments. As he neared the table, John Go called out, hello Randall. You seem to be enjoying your drink quite a bit. He stepped in front of the men seated, sniffing the air and with a big grin on his face, he said heartily, how delightful. What do you want, John? Demanded Randall he, scowling at John Go. Fully aware that John Go would not come to see him socially, Randall he knew he had an agenda. When Liam looked up from his wine and glimpsed Zen, his eyes bulged, and his mouth opened slightly, in shock. How, Zen, you're not dead, Liam half accused, half asked with alarm in his voice. Liam's question got the attention of Randall he, White Fiend and Black Fiend. None of those 3 had met Zen before and they looked over at him now. Like Liam, they were awestruck at Zen being alive. Since the last report they had gotten was that the Queen Blade Locust was chasing after him, they naturally assumed he wouldn't survive. It was what they were just talking about, and the reason for their celebration. Yet, here was Zen standing in front of them and very much alive. The shock and confusion they felt were too challenging to put into words. I was wondering who was behind this. It was you, very well, accused Zen. The revelation that the mastermind of the plot to kill Zen was Liam, a fellow disciple of Drizzle Peak, infuriated him, but, he held his temper in check and instead, he smiled contemptuously. Ha, yes, it was me, so what? Spat Liam venomously. Harumph. I don't know how you survived, but, since Master Fren wants you dead, I guess that's it, you will die here, at the Dragon Fort. I suggest you kill yourself here, that way That's quite enough of that. There won't be any fighting here. Snapped John Go. Getting involved with disputes among this younger generation was one thing he tried to avoid, and he wouldn't be embroiled in this matter either if not for Roger. Turning to Randall John Go commanded, where is Martin? Release him. No, John, I don't think I will, Randall refused outrightly, shaking his head. Why not? Inquired John Go. Well, if I let Martin out, he'll stir up trouble for me, again. Why would I ask for trouble? Being the same rank as John Go in the Imperial Army, Randall he had no intentions on taking orders from John Go. Oh, really? You dislike trouble, so, I will make this easier for you. If you don't let him go, you'll have even more trouble on your hands. Stated John Go. You're kidding, right? Chuckled Randall he maliciously. I'll have more trouble. Do you even know who I'm working for? That would be the Zug family, correct? Replied Zen, grinning caustically. Exactly. So, now that you know, go, run along. Don't stick your nose in the affairs you can't afford to mess with, or you'll find yourself in too deep. Not knowing the young men behind John Go, Randall he would have been furious at them with his short temper, but for John Go, he kept his temper in check. Both White Fiend and Black Fiend stood up, and as they did, black plumes of smoke swirled about White Fiend while a white light amassed around Black Fiend. The refining methods that the two practiced were white and black, which were unique and integral to each other. The way they moved indicated that the two were preparing an assault. Are you saying that you won't let Martin go? Asked Zen. Yes, that's what I said. I won't release him, snarled Randall he. Do you know who you're speaking to, boy? He added as he glared steadily into Zen's eyes. As Randall he stared, his bleak aura burst from his mind, towards Zen. Look out, shouted John Go as soon as he noticed Randall he's stare. Randall he's attack using the bleak aura was faster, and before John Go could do anything to prevent it, the aura had sprung at Zen. Is this a chill intent? Asked Zen, a little surprised. He hadn't expected Randall he to have the refining ability of an intent. Now, if the chill intent had been used in an attack on anyone else, they might find their soul frozen, immediately. But, the only thing frozen about Zen was the scornful smile on his face. Seemingly undaunted, he stood still, allowing the chill intent to assail him. Considering that when Zen felt the intent from the vengeful beast at the Heavenly Library, it wasn't able to cause him any tangible harm, the meager strength of Randall he's chill intent was paltry and nothing to Zen. Seeing Zen's soul was unharmed by his chill intent, Randall he stood there perplexed. Using this moment to strike, Zen gave a cold snort, and a translucent gray thorn flew out of his head. Spiritual thorn. The thorn had scarcely appeared before it struck Randall he's head. The speed the two sparred at was so fast that before the others present realized there was a fight, the sound of a cold snort from Zen was heard, and then Randall he was on the ground, crouching holding his head and screaming in anguish. You were teaching a fish how to swim. Look at you now, bringing shame to yourself. Mocked Zen casually as he stood over Randall he, clasping hands behind his back. Chapter 58, Clan Influence. A peculiar scene was unfolding in the yard. There were 10 ranks within the nature level. Huge gap existed between each two of these 10 ranks. For instance, Roger, White Fiend, and Black Fiend, who had all just reached the nature level, were at the first rank. Cultivators at the nature level were able to generate life vitality. They could use this life vitality as weapons to kill their enemies quietly. Randall and John, the best of the Imperial soldiers, had already reached the 4th rank of the nature level. They possessed great mastery of life vitality at this rank. That would give Randall a significant advantage if he fought against Roger or the others. Another fact that gave Randall an edge was that he had mastered the chill intent, which could give his opponent's soul frostbite in the blink of an eye. John's mouth twitched uncontrollably. He had agreed to help simply because he wanted to do Roger a favor. Otherwise, he would rather not make a dangerous enemy like Randall. He and Randall were both at the 4th rank, but Randall's mastery of chill intent made things different. If they fought with each other, John would have to pay a great deal of attention to Randall's intent. It would be a tough fight. But what on earth was going on here? John found himself utterly at a loss of the situation. If he wasn't mistaken, the youngster following Roger wasn't even near the threshold of the nature level. This kid was still at the marrow refining level. He couldn't even discharge life energy yet, let alone generate life vitality. Where did he get the nerve to challenge Randall? How did he dare say something like, "You are bringing shame to yourself"? And to John's surprise, not only had this kid said it, he had done it. John had witnessed the unusual scene. Randall's intent hadn't hurt Zen at all. Instead, Zen had snorted lightly at the attack, and then, Randall had screamed with pain. How could he have done that? John racked his brain to find an explanation but failed. Liam's mouth gaped open, impossibly wide. Although Randall had never revealed his true ability in front of them, Liam could sense it from their daily contact. Randall's majestic presence suggested that his force was way above those of White Fiend and Black Fiend. Randall was far out of their reach. If it hadn't been for Fren, Liam would never have gotten the chance to work with Randall. But again, what happened just now? How did Zen manage to hurt Randall so badly with just a snort? Liam knew Zen better than the others. Zen was a lowborn boy who had entered Drizzle Peak not long ago. A few days earlier, by some dumb fluke Zen had defeated Leo, his sect peer. Liam knew Zen's past, so he was more surprised at this scene than others. Roger's eyes lit up as delight coursed through him. Roger always prided himself on his knack of assessing people. As such, Roger had studied Zen and now believed that he had an accurate judgment about Zen. Although Zen was still at the marrow refining level, he would stand a chance of winning in a fight against a body refiner at the nature level. This assessment by Roger showed how high Zen's skills were. Roger trusted his judgment. He also knew that if he tried telling people about it, nobody would believe him. Despite Roger's high assessment of Zen's abilities, the young boy still surprised him. Roger was now sure that although he was confident of how Zen would perform, Zen's actual abilities and potential were still unknown to him. How many more secrets did Zen have? Was he holding back his abilities? Roger raised his chin as he thought about what Zen was capable of. He was smart enough to understand that it was unwise to reveal one's own true position and intention to the others. Some secrets could only be shared with your closest family members. Roger knew better than to ask stupid questions. Nevertheless, his decision to help Zen seemed pretty wise now. As assumed earlier, Roger was now confident that his clan could use this guy and his power to their advantage. Randall felt as though his head was going to split. It was like a sharp sting had pierced his soul, and the unutterable pain from his soul was tearing him apart. Fortunately, the soul was a special form. It could heal itself as time wore on, but the excruciating pain from attacks to the soul was inevitable. What Randall couldn't endure was that he had been publicly humiliated by this brat, a kid at the marrow refining level. John had witnessed all this. He might tell the soldiers. If that happened, Randall's authority would be destroyed. He must kill this brat to redeem himself. As Randall got to his feet, life vitality surged through his body. The air in the yard cooled instantly. Although it was a hot summer day, all onlookers felt chilled to the bone. The temperature must have dropped by dozens of degrees. You do have a death wish, don't you? But I'm afraid you picked the wrong way. You pissed me off, and you will regret it. There is going to be a hell lot of pain waiting for you before you die, Randall growled at Zen. A terrifying pressure radiated from Randall's body as he spoke. In the next instant, the force was directed at Zen. Zen's body tensed. The pressure was like a massive iceberg. Once it fell on him, he would be crushed to pieces. Randall's force was indeed extraordinarily powerful. He was not a common body refiner at the nature level. John. At this point, Roger called out and gave John a look. John understood. He took a step forward and placed himself in front of Zen. Then with a low voice, he said, "Just let it go, Randall. Fighting with a kid will not make you look good. Out of the way, John. His life is mine to take." Randall roared. Normally, Randall would consider John's advice. But now he had completely lost it. He couldn't think about anything else except tearing Zen apart. Randall, just because you have the Zook family supporting you, you think you can do whatever you want. John's face darkened. It seemed that Randall was not going to think rationally. So what? You want a fight? Randall clenched his fists. As white tufts of frost covered his hands, the air around Randall shimmered with cold. This was Randall's life vitality. You think I am afraid of you? John didn't flinch at Randall's rage. Seeing that the two were going to fight, Roger became impatient. I'm in no mood to watch you two fight. Just let Martin go. John, if you can't get it done, I will go find my uncle, Roger said with displeasure written all over his face. He had been confident that John could handle the issue. Randall could do this the easy way or the hard way, but apparently, he had chosen the latter. John's expression changed at Roger's words. If Roger's uncle were involved, it would take this situation to a whole different level. John didn't want that. He said quickly, "Young master, there is no need to trouble your uncle with such a little thing." Roger shrugged. He gestured around the yard and asked, "To me, it seems that they don't want to release Martin. Do you have any ideas?" John turned to Randall. "You heard the young master. If you don't release Martin, the Flying Dragon General will be involved. If that happens, this can get really ugly for you." The Flying Dragon General was one of the commanders who were in charge of Dragon Fort. Nobody knew the depth of his force. His reputation, however, was well known. For his achievements and skill, he had earned the title of Anchor of the Dragon Fort. The Flying Dragon General was undoubtedly the most famous general of the Imperial Army. He knows the Flying Dragon General. Randall's expression conveyed the skepticism he felt when he heard what John had said. If Roger had the support and protection of the Flying Dragon General, Randall would release Martin at once. But Randall had been through a lot of battles. He wasn't a man who would be easily intimidated by words. "Try crossing me, and you'll find out," Roger said calmly. Compared with Zen, his attitude was indifferent toward Randall, an undeniably stronger opponent. Roger had a domineering air that was exclusive to someone born with privilege, such as disciples from noble clans. This is the young master of the Meng clan. As to his relationship with the Flying Dragon General, you can take a wild guess now that you know his identity, John sneered. It was only when he heard the mention of the Meng clan that Randall came to understand the situation. It was no small wonder that John had dared to offend the Zug clan. John had the Meng clan behind him now. Not only did they put pressure on Randall with the Meng clan's name, but they also threatened to involve the Flying Dragon General. Randall wasn't some green boy. He knew what decision to make if the situation changed. Friend did have a certain reputation on which Randall could rely. But now the young master of the Meng clan was standing in front of him. Randall sighed as he knew there was no wiggle room left. Still, making a concession was never a pleasant experience. As feelings of resentment coursed through Randall, he turned and shot Zen a venomous glare. Roger, understanding that he had won, gave a cold laugh and turned to leave. If Roger involved the Flying Dragon General in this, Randall knew it wouldn't end well for him. "Okay," Randall said through gritted teeth. "I will let Martin go." "Great." Roger looked back when he heard Randall. Then he insulted the man further with a mocking retort. "We could have saved ourselves a lot of talking if you had been wiser." Randall didn't respond to Roger's riposte. He turned to the side and asked his accomplice to bring Martin. Randall was a tough guy, yet with a few words, and Roger had bent Randall to his will. Zen was impressed. Disciples from noble clans really knew how to achieve their goals by merely mentioning the influence of their clans. In comparison, an individual with no supporting clan seemed so small and powerless. Zen had no clan influence he could count on. All he had was his force, his fists. But that was okay, he would climb to the apotheosis of body refining based on his skills. Then, he would have his influence. Soon Martin was brought to the yard. The bruises all over his body implied that he had been beaten badly while in captivity. However, his calm expression and his state of mind conveyed that he was fine. Such injuries were not a big deal for a body refiner who was half a step into the nature level. Like others, when Martin saw Zen, he looked as if he had just seen a ghost. "Zen bro, you're alive. You're still alive," Martin exclaimed excitedly. "Yeah, Martin, I survived," Zen replied with a smile. "That's great, wonderful," Martin muttered. Throughout his imprisonment, Martin had been tormented over the death of his brothers during the fight with the Blade Locusts. It wasn't the lashes meted out to him that pained Martin the most. No, it was the thought that Zen had sacrificed himself by volunteering to bait the Queen Blade Locust to save Martin. All these times, Martin had not been able to stop thinking about what had happened. It was true that Martin blamed himself. If only he hadn't been so careless. If he had noticed there was something wrong with the marching route early enough, those people wouldn't have died. How Zen had survived was beyond Martin's understanding. The sight of Zen standing in the yard unscathed filled Martin with surprise and joy. "Zen, Randall is responsible for all this. He is the culprit." Martin turned to Randall and pointed as he spoke. "As I recall, I had no beef with you before. But you changed our marching route without permission, which put my teammates' lives on the line. I will give my life to hold you responsible for your actions." Chapter 59, Conjectures. Randall was very depressed. He knew that Martin would be unwilling to let things go. If Martin hadn't argued with him in the first place, Randall would not have locked him up. He didn't know that Martin had Roger, a young master of the Meng clan, behind him. Now Randall found himself in an awkward situation. To please Fren, a young master of the Zug clan, he had offended Roger. But Randall hadn't accomplished anything. It was too late to repent. "Martin, if something is unclear, let's go back and talk about it," said Zen with a wink to Martin. Now that Martin had been released, they needed to consider the matter carefully before making a decision. If they fell out with Randall, they would be in a bad situation, too. Stubborn as Martin was, he had a clear understanding of the situation in which he found himself. Hearing what Zen said, he cast a scornful glare at Randall and shut his mouth. Seeing that everything was settled, John guided the crowd out of the yard. Randall remained in the yard. He was quite upset. He glanced at Liam, who had also stayed behind. Randall growled, "Didn't you say that Zen was just an ordinary disciple without any influential background? Why is a person from the Meng clan behind him?" If he had known what was going to happen, Randall would never have agreed to get involved. With his temper and ruthlessly efficient style, Randall wanted to beat up Liam. But Liam had come to the Dragon Fort on behalf of Fren, so Randall didn't dare to offend him too much. He had already annoyed Roger, a nobleman of the Meng clan. If he couldn't align himself with Fren of the Zug clan, Randall would be in a more precarious position. It's because Liam didn't have a reason. He was equally puzzled. Liam turned to Randall and said, "Zen is an ordinary disciple at Cloud Sect. And he has no strong background. I don't know how he made the acquaintance of a young master from the Meng clan." Liam was wondering about this as well. Why did Roger help Zen? He was aware of the rules of conduct of noblemen. There were two ways to be a part of them. The first was to bring great benefits to the children of the noble clans. The other was to be obedient and submissive to them and do what they asked. Either way, children of noble clans never considered ordinary people as friends. However, Roger, the young master of the Meng clan, was willing to stand up for Zen and take care of him. How did Zen attach himself to the Meng clan? And what did he rely on? Liam was confused. "I told you that we should have killed that boy. It was a simple and easy task." "But Liam, you idiot. You wanted to kill him inconspicuously. That was too much to hope for. You wanted him to be killed by the blade locusts, but now he is alive. As far as your ability is concerned, I consider it a joke that Fren sent you to do this," grumbled White Fiend. "It's not too late. The minute Zen leaves the Dragon Fort, we'll kill him," said Black Fiend with a dark smile. "You are right. Now that we have offended the Meng clan, we should kill Zen as soon as possible. Otherwise, we will face not only the wrath of the Meng clan, but also Fren's anger," said Randall. Liam nodded and said, "Well, then, we'll do as Black Fiend has suggested. As soon as Zen comes out of the Dragon Fort, we'll kill him." A wild look reflected in their eyes at the prospect of getting even with Zen. They knew the rules of the noble clans. If ordinary people were useful to the noblemen they served, they would earn endless benefits. If, however, they proved useless, the noblemen they assisted would surely kill them. ... After leaving the small yard, John walked Zen and the others out of the main army camp. Along the way, he said, "You have upset and disgraced Randall. I believe that he will act on this humiliation. They will find every opportunity to kill you. So, I advise you to leave Dragon Fort and return to Cloud Sect as soon as possible." Roger agreed with John. He said, "Zen, you have got the crystal core of the Queen Blade Locust. You will be able to exchange it for a lot of points. It has been a rewarding trip for you. Will you return to Cloud Sect with us? I'm still trying to figure out how on earth you managed to get rid of that Queen Blade Locust," said John. He had heard about the ins and outs of the matter. He knew that Zen had not only escaped from the clutches of the Queen Blade Locust, he had also killed her and retrieved her crystal core. But that was what he found hard to believe. John knew that Zen was strong and had a great capacity for fighting. But even with his strength, Zen was not powerful enough to be a challenging opponent to the Queen Blade Locust. He couldn't believe that Zen had killed her by himself. Hearing John's statement, Zen smiled but chose to remain quiet. By no means could he afford to explain. He couldn't tell John that he had not killed the Queen Blade Locust. The Fire Scorpion Lion had killed her. While the Queen's crystal core might not be very valuable in their eyes, the Fire Scorpion Lion's crystal core was precious indeed. The Fire Scorpion Lion's crystal core was the best material for pill refining and weapon refining. The top 7 clans in the Empire would do anything to get the Fire Scorpion Lion's core. If they knew where the Fire Scorpion Lion was, they would send people to seek, hunt, and kill it. If that happened, the people seeking the Fire Scorpion Lion would find the dead bodies of both, the Queen Blade Locust and the Fire Scorpion Lion. Then they would speculate that Zen was in possession of the crystal cores of both creatures. This would be a huge mistake. Zen would not be so stupid as to expose the matter. So, Zen changed the topic and asked, "Roger, how many points can be exchanged for the Queen's crystal core?" Hearing Zen ask such a silly question, Sun, who had not spoken for a long time, began to cough violently. He even had to thump his chest with his hands to stop the coughing. He turned to Zen and asked incredulously, "Whoa, Zen. You don't know?" Zen shrugged his shoulders, showing that he really knew nothing about it. Since he had never thought himself capable of getting the Queen Blade Locust's crystal core, Zen had never looked into it. The Queen Blade Locust's crystal core can be exchanged for 1,000 points. "So, you are going to have a small fortune," said Roger with a broad smile. A small fortune. Zen and Sun were both shocked when they heard Roger. 1,000 points were equal to 2,000 cubic crystals. In the entire Burning Sky Empire, no more than 50 clans, most of which were the noble clans, possessed 2,000 cubic crystals. But to Roger, it was a small sum of money. Zen and Sun couldn't help being in awe of Roger. They assumed that all children of noble clans were billionaires. 1,000 points is a lot of money. But it's not enough. "I'll stay here and earn more points," said Zen while looking at Roger. It was true that Zen had initially sought to gain 100 points to get a ticket to visit his sister at Hell Mountain, but Zen had changed his mind. He wanted to earn as many as possible by killing the greatest number of blade locusts. Saving Yan Luo from Hell Mountain would cost him 1,000,000 points. And so far, Zen had accumulated only about 1,000th of what he needed. Hunting for blade locusts, especially the blade locust officers, was an excellent opportunity for Zen to earn points. The insect aggression usually lasted 2 or 3 months every year. After this period, he would have no choice but to wait for the next year. Zen didn't want to waste this opportunity. Roger and other people looked at Zen in surprise. They didn't know why Zen wanted to accumulate so many points. Did he want to exchange them for pills? Or did he want to exchange them for refining skills? Perhaps he wanted to swap them for magic weapons. For Zen, at this stage, 1,000 points were sufficient to exchange for anything he needed. "Are 1,000 points not enough? Then how many is enough?" asked Sun. Zen answered with a bitter smile, "Probably 1,000,000 points." Hearing this, Sun coughed violently again in fright. Even Martin, who knew little about Cloud Sect, was frightened by the figure. He had interacted with several disciples of Cloud Sect, and he knew that the crystal core of a blade locust officer could be exchanged for 1 point. Zen wanted to accumulate 1,000,000 points, which was equivalent to hunting 1,000,000 blade locust officers. The number was so unexpected. They were all scared by the figure Zen quoted. Roger was stunned, too. After the shock wore off, he began to wonder why Zen needed so many points, and what he wanted to do with them. 1,000,000 points were equivalent to 2,000,000 cubic crystals. It was a considerable sum of money even for a nobleman. Even at Cloud Sect, only a few treasures needed 1,000,000 points to be redeemed. Will he exchange them for a fairy weapon? No, he won't. Roger knew that Zen was only at the marrow refining level. Given his strength, he was unable to unleash the power of a fairy weapon. So he wouldn't be doing this for a fairy weapon. Does he want to earn a ticket to the Cloud Road? No, he doesn't. It was true that he could walk on the Cloud Road by the use of 1,000,000 points, but considering his current cultivation stage and his strength, he wouldn't pass the trial. Is he going to save someone from Hell Mountain? Roger felt that this inference was closer to the truth. Several people had been imprisoned in Hell Mountain, but most of them had been there for 3 or 5 years. 1,000,000 points, that meant that the person had been sentenced to 1,000 years imprisonment there. Could it be her, the girl whose talent no one could match? She had been sentenced to 1,000 years of contemplation at Hell Mountain. Wasn't her surname Luo? Zen Luo was her namesake. What was the relationship between them? Zen was trying to accumulate 1,000,000 points. That meant that he wanted to save her from Hell Mountain. So far, the results were clear. Roger was very confident of his inference. Although he hadn't seen her before, as the young master of the Meng clan, he was aware of what was happening at Cloud Sect, especially the important things. Roger couldn't help repressing a sigh of admiration. Zen Luo and Yan Luo were both geniuses, but it was a pity that they were not of noble birth and that they were always offending other people. Otherwise, Yan Luo wouldn't have been imprisoned in Hell Mountain. Zen had taken it for granted that he could save Yan Luo from Hell Mountain as long as he accumulated 1,000,000 points. He was so naive. It was not quite as easy as that. But if Zen could accumulate 1,000,000 points and had the power to save Yan Luo from Hell Mountain, the Meng clan could also give them a proper hand at the back. But Zen's strength was the premise of everything. Meng clan's assistance depended on whether Zen had the ability to do so. That was what Roger thought about all this. He didn't realize that he was very concerned about Zen. He said, "Since you are determined to stay here and continue to hunt for blade locusts, you must be careful about those people." Zen nodded and thanked him. "I will pay attention to them, and thank you for your help, Roger." Roger patted Zen on the shoulder as a faint smile danced on his lips. Then he said, "Don't mention it. I hope you accumulate 1,000,000 points as soon as possible and bring her out of Torture Mountain." Zen did a double take when he heard what Roger said. He had mentioned that he needed 1,000,000 points. He hadn't said anything about Yan Luo. It was amazing that Roger was able to guess Zen's purpose based on this detail. No wonder Roger was the elite figure in the Meng clan. He was brilliant. Chapter 60, White Fiend and Black Fiend. Intelligent people talk less and listen more. Zen smiled knowingly as he listened to Roger. Sun had no idea what they were talking about. He wanted to ask, but he didn't think it would be appropriate to interrupt their conversation. So he kept silent. "After I return to Cloud Sect, I will stay secluded and cultivate myself. If you want to see me, Zen, come to the Daylily Peak," said Roger. The Daylily Peak ranked 4th among the 33 peaks at Cloud Sect. Due to its leading position, most children of the Meng clan studied there. "So you are a disciple of the Daylily Peak. When I return to Cloud Sect, I will visit you," replied Zen. Zen didn't think it was necessary to follow noble clans. In his opinion, a man had to strike out for himself if he wanted to get ahead. He didn't think it was suitable to rely on other people's power. Having spent some time with the young master of the Meng clan, Zen found that he would like to be friends with Roger. After saying goodbye, Roger and Sun embarked the giant flying chariot to return to Cloud Sect. On the way back from the main camp, Martin didn't speak a word. Martin was grateful for Roger and Zen's help as they had risked their lives to save his. But he was in a bad mood because of the death of his subordinates. As a battle-hardened soldier in the Imperial Army, Martin had seen many soldiers come and go. Over time, he had become accustomed to death. He had never been this sad, not even when he had seen his biological brother die on the battlefield. But this time, things were different. He knew that Randall had deliberately framed the soldiers of the Green Haze group. With growing resentment, he vowed that he would avenge their deaths. "Let's grab a few drinks." Zen invited Martin. He knew that Martin needed to vent. At the tavern, Martin gulped down more than a dozen jars of wine. As long as they did not want to get drunk, people who were at Martin's cultivation level were able to stay sober. "I'm so sorry, Martin. You may not know that this happened because of me. I killed your brothers." Zen raised his cup of wine and apologized. Martin had not figured out why Randall wanted to harm him. After hearing Zen's apology, Martin asked with wonder, "It's obvious that Randall wanted to hurt me. Why are you apologizing?" "Actually, they didn't want to harm the Green Haze group. Their real target was me. Some people want me to die. They instructed Randall to change the marching route to place the Green Haze group near the Queen Blade Locust," explained Zen. His voice conveyed the regret he was feeling. Zen was remorseful that the Green Haze group lost nearly half its soldiers because of him. Martin clenched his fists when he finally realized why Randall, who had no enmity with him, had harmed the Green Haze group unexpectedly. He glared at Zen for a while, then gradually calmed down and said with a sigh, "Zen, don't feel guilty. Even if what you say is true, Randall is still the villain. Not you. He violated the rules of the military and changed the marching route slyly. Of course, I'm going to hold him responsible. We must get revenge. It's one of the reasons I decided to stay here. On the one hand, I will earn points by killing the blade locusts, while on the other hand, I will be able to find a chance to get even," Zen said before gulping down his cup of wine. "Do you have any ideas, Zen?" Martin's eyes twinkled with hope. Although Martin hated Randall, it was impossible for him to fight Randall alone for many reasons. First, Randall was his immediate superior, and he had no evidence of Randall's crime. Second, Randall was at the 4th grade of the nature refining level. Therefore, Martin was no match for a man with such power. Zen replied with a smile, "There must be a way. It's best if we wait for an opportunity. I know the tenacity of these people. They won't give up as long as I'm here. They are digging their graves. I'll kill them all." Martin felt a chill travel through him when he saw Zen's determination. Roger was not like Zen. Because Roger was born in a noble clan, he had to consider many alternatives and weigh their merits and consequences. Zen was a civilian without any significant background. And so, he could do things without having to consider interests. Though they had been together for a few days, Zen understood who was worthy for him to make friends with. Zen swore to fight those behind the conspiracy despite the risks. He would do this for Martin, Tank, and all the other victims. Over the next 5 days, Martin reorganized the Green Haze group and resumed their task of hunting blade locusts. As per the regulations of the Imperial Army, soldiers were required to hand in half of the crystal cores of blade locusts hunted by them. But, it was up to Martin to decide the quantity of crystal cores that the Green Haze group had collected. So Martin donated nearly 90% of their crystal cores to Zen as gratitude. Martin and his soldiers were well experienced at hunting blade locusts. Zen contributed to their efforts as well by using his broken flying knife. It was because of Zen that the whole hunting process was smoother and more fruitful. During these 5 days, Zen had acquired quite an abundant harvest. Along with his previous collection, Zen had accumulated about 4,000 crystal cores of common blade locusts and more than 200 cores of their officers. He earned the equivalent of 500 points in total. If he counted the crystal core of the queen blade locust, Zen would be able to exchange all the cores for 1,500 points. As a new disciple who had joined Cloud Sect less than a month ago, Zen had accumulated 1,500 points through his effort. If the other disciples knew about this, they would sigh at the injustice of fate. Early on the 6th day, Zen prepared to hunt with the Green Haze group. They went into the jungle and killed 2 flocks of blade locusts. While the soldiers were stripping the corpses off their crystal cores, Martin asked Zen, "You said that as long as you stay here, the conspirators will plan another attack on you. But nothing has happened in the past few days. What happened to them?" Since Zen had promised to help Martin get his revenge, Martin hadn't reported Randall to the main camp. Martin knew that his complaint would backfire as he had no evidence and his superiors at the main camp wouldn't believe him. Zen had reassured Martin that they would take action again, but it had been several days, and no one had come for Zen. Martin was understandably anxious. "I didn't expect these guys to be so patient. Don't worry, we will kill our blade locusts and wait," said Zen. He pulled out the crystal core of a leader of the blade locust and stuffed it into his space ring. Sensing tension in the air, Zen looked up and said, "I've just praised the conspirators for their patience. But it seems that they can no longer wait." Zen was more acute than the average people. He was able to feel a person's intent to kill from far away. After a while, 3 men came out of the jungle. Liam of Drizzle Peak led the way. Behind him walked 2 men. One was dark-skinned, and the other was white-skinned. Zen had seen them in the military camp's yard before. He had been deeply impressed by their contrasting skin colors. Liam came closer and sneered, "You know we want to kill you, but you still stay in the Dragon Fort. You are bold enough to step out of town and hunt blade locusts. Are you confident or are you stupid?" During these 6 days, they had many chances to kill Zen, but they had waited patiently. They needed to study the relationship between Roger and Zen before making their move. They wondered why a young master of a noble clan would help a humble civilian like Zen. Since this matter involved 2 noble clans, the Meng clan and the Zug clan, the 3 conspirators knew they needed to handle the issue with caution. Otherwise, they would face the wrath of both noble clans. After 6 days of observation and gathering intelligence, they had reached a conclusion. Roger and Zen had met by chance and adventured along with the Green Haze group. In fact, their friendship was not deep. Zen persuaded Roger to intervene and save Martin's life. Roger just did Zen this favor, nothing special. Now that they were sure that Zen and Roger were not friends, their concerns about the Meng clan getting involved were gone, and they could proceed boldly. Zen narrowed his eyes and pointed at Liam. "You followed me all the way from Cloud Sect to kill me. I haven't settled this matter with you. How can I leave? It has been 6 days since your last attempt. Since then, you have not dared to come out. I overestimated you." Zen sighed and shook his head. Despite facing strong enemies, Zen did not show any traces of timidity. He had been refined by the fire of the Earth's core and stepped into the rank of spiritual weapon a few days ago. Now, he wanted to see how much his strength had improved. Liam and his 2 co-conspirators were just practice targets for Zen. Liam's heartbeat quickened when he saw the confidence in Zen's eyes. He didn't understand why he felt afraid when he faced Zen, a person who was only at the marrow refining level. He must be putting on a show of confidence. He's not that strong, Liam reassured himself. He didn't want to be known that he was afraid. "Really, since you can't wait to end your life, then we will help you," said Liam with feigned placidity. Liam waved his hand toward his companions and said, "Black Fiend and White Fiend, my friends. Kill him now." Liam grinned at Zen and retreated. White Fiend and Black Fiend had been restless all this while. They had stayed at the Dragon Fort for many days. Killing Zen should have been a short day's work. However, this assignment had stretched to well over a week. So they were very displeased. A fierce fight was about to begin. Soon a constant flow of life vitality was running through White Fiend and Black Fiend's bodies. The two fiends slowly approached Zen. A cold smile danced on their faces as they imagined the pain they would mete out to Zen. Zen could feel the pressure in the air that only those at the nature refining level possessed. "Green Haze Group, get ready to fight," shouted Martin. As soon as the soldiers heard Martin's order, they wielded their weapons and rushed into battle formation. However, Zen waved his hand to stop Martin. He quickly explained, "You don't have to get involved in this. They came for me, and I have to deal with them myself." Zen stepped forward to prepare for the battle. The Green Haze Group had lost so many soldiers because of Zen. He didn't want to involve them anymore. Black Fiend and White Fiend emitted strange laughter when they heard Zen. "Not only will you die today, but the whole Green Haze Group will also die with you. If I were you, I would kneel and kill myself at once. Now fall into our hands, you will die miserably." After saying that, White Fiend and Black Fiend mutated their life vitality into black and white smog. In the next instant, the smog turned into two pythons and swept along the ground toward Zen. "They are releasing their life vitality," thought Zen while dodging two fiends' attacks. Although Zen was confident of his body, which had become a spiritual weapon, he still needed to be cautious. After all, this was the first time he was facing cultivators at the nature refining level. What made the fight even more challenging was that he was fighting two people at the same time.